'cause I think you're too afraid of a title. Shady, 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 shady. And it ain't right. Tell me, tell me, tell me, tell me, tell me, we'll be alright. Baby, don't you play another song on my heartstrings. Just tell me the truth. If you want me, then show it. What you wanna do? What you wanna do? What you wanna do? Tell me how you feel, how you really feel.
Happy Monday, everybody.
Well, good day, friends.
Yo. All right, just waited till the last minute to do the registration for my company, renew it.
Oh, yeah?
Sorry. Got one of those. Yeah, you're about to get arrested by the authorities in Delaware if you don't do this now.
Just don't go back to
Not
Delaware.
Not quite that, but it needs a credit card code, so I'm not gonna worry about that now. Hello, y'all.
Hey.
Hi.
Did you guys see the our national loss?
I mean, it's been a time of great turmoil over the past few days. But for which are you speaking?
I'm talking about Tumblr deleting all of their adult content.
Bryce, too soon. Wrong generation.
Yeah. Wait. So Tumblr cleared out its
2 weeks.
adult themed
Yeah,
blogs.
In 2 weeks, they're gonna turn on all the algorithms and start deleting posts. And
It was
so-
always a classier source of porn, my friends tell me.
It was a relatively harmless ecosystem for finding porn, to be honest. Like, compared to like any number of shady websites and all. I don't know. But it's also the only platform I can think of that has used blogging in a multimedia way. Like, Medium is very much for written work, where, adult and non sorts of content all flourished on Tumblr, and
Yeah, I mean, in
weird.
a pre-Instagram world, that was a real place for multimedia stuff and art and music and stuff like that. I'm curious as to why now. Who owns them now? Are they still Yahoo?
Right?
no, Verizon owns them.
Right.
Because either Yahoo sold them or Yahoo got bought by Verizon. But now it's Verizon/Oath. And this is I don't know how much of this is like they want to sell Tumblr, and they were just in the news last week for being delisted on the App Store because there was child porn found on Tumblr, which is bad.
I take back what I
Unsurprising.
said about being a classier place for this.
Yeah.
Apparently they had some of the systems in place that a lot of other sites do for detecting and deleting that sort of stuff. But I guess there was a treasure trove of stuff that it just completely missed. So bless you.
Sorry, I couldn't mute that time.
So yeah, I would assume that this is Verizon trying to.
Yeah, it's OAuth. Yeah, Verizon now, or
Yeah.
becomes Verizon Media Group in 2019. Yeah.
I don't know.
Interesting. Is there, like, I have heard like Medium's having trouble, and obviously Tumblr's not fulfilled, but WordPress has done lots. Like, WordPress has really expanded, but it seems like they're just, there is a niche out there for some sort of text-based. Anybody can go put this text-based thing in there,
Yeah.
and I know, like, you can do Facebook posts, but that's the Facebook ecosystem, and I just wonder if there's.
I wonder because WordPress has blossomed because the WordPress tech can just kind of go anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
But
it's
they never-
robust. you know, and also there is there's a real business need for a website still, and that's where you've seen kind of the explosion of the Squarespaces and the Wixes and stuff like that. Is like, all right, well, here, have a website that looks good and you can do it fairly quick, and you're willing to pay, you know, more than what you would otherwise. WordPress has always kind of had a free option, but getting more into that game and also just being a place where I think like real web developers want to develop is huge.
Sure, but I guess my thing is like I had every now and then I have an idea for like, I want to write a little bit about this, explain this thing, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't blog, you know, at all anymore because just that, you know, the maintenance of that. But it's like, oh, if I want to just go write this thing and share this,
where would you even post it?
Yeah, there are ways, but there's like, I'll go write a Medium post sort of thing, but then it's, which Medium I thought, you know, was going to do a lot more to do, but I think that Medium's, you know, I may be incorrect, but I've had trouble there. But I think that like, I don't know. I like the idea of, I don't know, some sort of minimalist, write a thing, drag a photo, here's a link, here's all of your things, and you're done.
Well, and I think almost every blogging platform has had that trouble of building a community around that platform, right? Like WordPress, WordPress does have like their WordPress.com like system, so you could you know, blog roll and whatever, but I can't think of anything, certainly not recently.
I mean, to be honest, and this is something that Andrew and I have had many conversations about, but this was, I think, the spot where Twitter kind of really missed the boat. That Twitter should have invested in a very integrated blogging platform that basically took the fact that people want to write longer stuff on Twitter, but Threads, like, although they are, I think we are past the point of Threads being like, oh, cool, that's a thing, and now it's like, okay, did I get to the beginning part, or if somebody, if like the most popular part of it is the one that's retweeted, but it's number 8, now I got to go back and see, and I got to click 4 things. Just make it a thing where it's like, all right, you click, it either opens up in another app or it opens up in that app because it's integrated, and you have a place where you can enjoy longer form content. Because to me, that's where I find all my long form articles is on Twitter. I don't find that Facebook is really conducive to it in the same way. People, the users want to do it, and yet Twitter, I think, has consistently sort of stuck to this like, oh, well, let's make it longer characters, and we'll make Threads theoretically easier to view.
Yeah, I agree. Like over the weekend, I put out like, hey, 5 things you should know about self-publishing. I did them as like, you know, tweet 1, tweet 2, which was a pain in the ass, which made me think maybe there's room to write. You know, there was early on like people creating kind of cool apps for Twitter, but maybe like a social media word processor, which just helped you focus and could segment stuff. As there's a thing for this, but like, you know, and with Twitter, it's like I get like, hey, the 144 characters, great. Well, now 288, like, it's like, how about 144 above the fold, and then the rest below? You know, you want to read more, go read down here. If I don't have your attention at this point, then you just go scroll on past. I think that would have been a cool, you know, way to do longer tweets and stuff. I think that could have made the medium really, really powerful.
Yeah, I wonder how much of that was Twitter either sticking to their guns of like trying to stay strong to the concept of Twitter, or like trying to, because there's always been like tweet longer or any number of other.
And that's something that can plug in a more robust era of third-party apps. You could have ones that just kind of either allowed you to write easier with that kind of stuff, but even then it was always janky. And if there's one thing that you can say about Twitter is that, like, you know, Periscope was a great addition. Periscope was something that it's like, there's room for that content. That's where I want to share that content. Let's, you know, make it easier to integrate. You can get in there really, really fast. You're automatically logged in. You can automatically comment. That kind of ticks all those boxes. But for whatever reason, that to me has been where it's like, man, I would probably write a lot more on Twitter because I already have an audience. I mean, that's the biggest thing about writing on the internet in 2018 is that, sure, JC Calhoun says you can write on your own website.
No one's going to click, but then you have to convince someone to click in to read something where they already are.
Yeah, I get right on my website, but I can tell you how many people visited my website yesterday versus how many people went to my Twitter. And every time you ask people to jump from here to here,
Right.
you lose a huge amount of people. Whereas if you have this platform that, spending one time in one platform, kind of idea. Part of the thing with Twitter is, remember Twitter was there, hey, we're kind of cool. Then Facebook had explosive growth. And then Twitter's like, we need to be a social network. And that was sort of, instead of being a media network, they said, let's be a social network. Then social networks are now shifting into becoming media networks. And Twitter's like, hey, we're kind of there. Oh, wait, now what are we doing, guys?
Do you guys want to save this for After Things?
Sure.
Or revisit this on After Things?
Yep.
Just so we can get weird things in and out? Alrighty, well, then I'm good to go. If you guys are good to go, you good, Andrew?
Yep.
And by the way, R.I.P. to those Tumblr sites for getting weird things in and out.
Okay. All right, then take it away for Weird Things, Andrew, in 3, 2.
Hello and welcome to the Weird Things podcast. I'm Andrew Main, joined by my co-host, Bryce Castillo.
Hey, Andrew. How's it going, man?
Fantastic. And Mr. Justin Robert Young.
Hi, friends. Good to be with you.
Yeah, you know who can't be with us?
Oh, old Salty Tushwood. He is out at his stately manor, looking to I don't know, build some kind of hell pit that everybody can worship around.
Actually, I was going to say he Jayenkyo, but also Brian too. He Jayenkyo can't be with us either. You're like, hey, who's this guy? Remember last week we talked about the story about, the Chinese may have been doing gene editing on babies, like having babies that were gene edited, which we all agree is the future. But hey, when the future hits you at first, it's scary.
Yes.
Yeah.
Headline today: Chinese gene editing scientist is missing amid rumors of arrest.
Oh, no.
No, apparently that story made headlines around the world. Maybe some people, maybe he crossed some lines or something, and in typical Chinese fashion, we don't know. This disappear you. You just, they take you to a police station.
Andrew. I'm sure you can just go right up to the Chinese police station and request request an arrest report, and there's due process, so he'll be able to get a lawyer in there immediately, so they can hear a full recitation of the charges against him.
Tell us again where many Chinese police stations are located, Justin.
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess I got to be. Well, I'll be on the hunt. I'll let you guys know.
You might find one there in Oakland, probably.
Yeah, often what they do is they put police stations are like it'll be under the basement of TGI Fridays in Beijing or something. Like they have secret police stations, detention centers, and China's big, so you're like, hey, I'm missing, my wife. Like, not here. Where do I look? Not here. Okay, let me just look up a list of Chinese police stations in the phone book.
So
No,
I know,
not really there.
I know. I don't know if this was this might have been an After Things topic, but I know we had talked about the Chinese actress who went missing, and has since reappeared in the past week or so.
Fan Bing.
Do we think that we see this guy again?
He will. Fan Bing Bing was one that he'll show up again. Often what happens is they spend time, and it's like in China, they're doing for the Muslim population, the Uyghurs, those people is they go to vocational schools. They have these really wonderful vocational schools where they teach them new skills behind barbed wire and guard towers, but they're vocational schools. They teach them skills like
breaking rocks and
don't don't be weird, or what we think is weird, or anyhow. So generally these people surface a lot later and very apologetic and contrite for their ways and agree to be good citizens.
Sometimes they'll settle some outstanding tax issue that had not been previously understood, and they will get on their merry way.
And it's not, we don't want to make this into weird politics and all this, but like it's like there was a headline, CNN had an article about, calling for the release of two young Americans who've been held in China because apparently their father has been wanted in China, who was originally Chinese citizen, but who's, been accused of massive fraud. And so like, they're kind of holding his kids there and they're like, these kids are American citizens, and they're like, hey, you guys, we're going to make a guess here until dad shows up. Well, anyhow, we're not going to talk politics here, though. So, gene editing guy, know.
It is known that it is a different way of living out there, and this is an example of, the great differences that we have culturally between us and China.
Yes. Who's to say who's right? And we all have progress that needs to be made, so I'll make that clear. But anyhow, so the scientists there. So I think that we'll find out. We'll find out the real story. A year from now, and nobody cares. But for the Chinese government, I think clearly, they're very, very into. Some people are saying that it's. If you want to do some kinds of research, it's the only place to go is to China. It's because China is a lot more forward as far as allowing certain kinds of research. So, but I think that they're I don't quite know if he crossed any legal lines there, but we'll find out more. So anyhow, that was conclusion to the story from last week.
There we go.
Yeah. Hey, I'm going to tell you guys this, and I don't want you to I don't want to have you panic. I don't want you to go oh my God, we can do this.
That's the best way to get someone to not panic is to tell them, I'm going to tell you a thing, and don't panic when you hear it.
Yeah. Or hey, I don't want to start an argument.
Yeah.
With all due respect.
No, but hey, a rocket launched today, and the first stage landed. And it was the third time the first day. Actually, this was kind of a big deal. So SpaceX had another rocket launch today. What? And they, reused a rocket booster. It's old news now. Who cares? We do that all the time. And that's kind of how awesome it is. It's become routine. But what's cool is SpaceX launched actually it's called a Frankenstack. It was a satellite containing 64 separate mini satellites that were ejected from it, ranging from communications experiments and government payloads to an art project that featured a canopic jar representing the first African-American astronaut who tragically died during a training mission. So never got to go into space, and now there's this representation there. What's cool is the booster they used to send this. I mean, it's all cool. The cool part I'm going to mention right now is the booster they used to launch this is the third time they've used it. This is 3 times they've used this booster.
Wow, that's great.
So,
and so this would hold the record, right? This is the most reused that we have. Which, I mean, I guess, do you know what the projected life cycle is for these boosters, or are we just figuring it out as we go along?
Their goal, I believe, this is the F9 full stack, whatever. I want to say their goal is 100 per or something like that. I mean, I can look this up. What's cool though, if you can pull up a photo, Bryce, of this before it launched, if you want to take a look at the booster, what it looked like.
It looks kind of dirty and dingy.
Yeah, that's so it's covered in soot. They just said hey, there's no point to trying to
clean it all up.
This.
Really? You would think that the cleanliness of the exterior shell would be important. I mean, it's rocket science. It's literally rocket science.
Well, but also, I mean, they can be next to godliness by shooting a rocket into the sky. So who needs cleanliness?
So the point is that's actually that soot is sort of worked its way into the paint job, and so trying to clean it would involve totally stripping it down, which goes against the purpose. So the soot is sort of part of it. I kind of like the fact that we're launching, you look at your jet engines in the back of those, and they're sort of sooty. And I love the fact that we live in this age where now we're launching rockets that look like the Millennium Falcon, as far as, scuffed up, which, feels very realistic. So Block 5, which is what they're launching now, the plan is they want to fly each one 10 times with only an inspection in between and up to 100 times with refurbishment. So And that's
so
that.
So this is now we're at 3
Mm-hmm.
of them doing it. That's amazing, remarkable. And again, not the we need to hammer this point home, but this is where the savings comes in, ladies and gentlemen. Is the more we can reuse it, the cheaper all of this gets. The cheaper all of this gets, the more things that can go into space. Because for and that's a very touching art installation that has gone into space with this mini sat explosion. But I would take a wild guess that no matter how pure of heart and touching that art installation is, previously putting that up into low Earth orbit would probably be out of the budget for most people, unless you really, really, really wanted to spend a lot of cash on this. Now it makes sense.
Yeah.
So what? Yeah, and precisely. So what's kind of awesome about this is the company that bought this launch I think they're Space Flight Systems. They wanted to be like, hey, we wanted to provide payload support, help people launch things into space. And then, the CEO of the company is like, why don't we buy our own SpaceX, our Falcon? Why don't we buy our own Falcon to do a launch? Because they're looking, the price tag's like 60, 70 million, something like that. They looked at that. They're like, well, that's a lot. But if we split it up, we find enough paying customers, because some people will pay, 10 million. Some people might pay 500. We, split up this. If we buy this payload, and we're doing this called like a sun-centric orbit. So the payload's going to be facing towards the sun. So they can, so we find some people who are willing to go on board there, and they got, 64 payloads there, including like a high school, which is awesome.
So
and
is this secondary company selling a SpaceX payload, or is SpaceX facilitating this?
They went to SpaceX and they said, hey, how much for you to launch one of our payloads? I'm like, it's like, whatever forget the price tag, like 50, 60 million. This is what it costs. Like, great. We take a deposit, and we're going to go out and we're going to find some other people who want to launch something but can't afford an entire launch.
Sure.
And
Split it.
Yeah. So they bought it and they sublet it, which we're going to see more of that now. We're going to see a lot more of that now. And when you start thinking about when the Starship, the big Falcon rocket, starts to fly, and you can go put this thing up for weeks or months in time in orbit and have a mini space station, you're going to see people say, hey, we're going to take slots for, 20 researchers and payloads to go do experiments on this thing.
Wow.
We're going to get a lot more of this. It's exciting. Now, SpaceX did a launch today. How long do you think before they do their next launch?
Oh man, I mean, it's rocket science, Andrew. I would
week?
say is anywhere between a week and several months, maybe.
How about tomorrow?
Oh my God!
Wow.
From Canaveral as well.
Yeah, it'll be. This one was from Vandenberg. The next one tomorrow will be from Canaveral. They're going to be launching a resupply mission. So I mean, 24 hours. 2 launches in almost 24 hours.
That's incredible.
It's the future.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's kind of amazing about it is from SpaceX's point of view, the idea of that third party kind of subletting it and making sure that you can get all these mini sats on there is great. I mean, as long as there's nothing that would damage the viability of the mission itself, then SpaceX is in the business of selling payloads. So if somebody else wants to go do it for them instead of SpaceX having to find everybody else to do it, that's awesome. Yeah. From their perspective.
It is a wonderful win-win for everybody. It just, and having another, and for SpaceX too, they've got X amount of resources, and to try to do, they have teams, people working on sales and stuff, but to have another company say, hey, we'll build the launcher that has all the things attached to it. We'll take care of all this. You just give us a date and tell us when to have this thing show up. And, it's a platform. It's a real platform for, space. So.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Somebody says JC Uber for rockets. Like, yeah, it's a great, and they do that like other companies like NanoRacks and there are some other companies out there that are trying to do like ride sharing for this. And, the more people are aware of it, the more people think of what they can do. Hey, you know what else is a win-win situation?
What is?
Well, would it be patreon.com/weirdthings?
This is true. This is a
man.
win for everybody.
It is a win for everybody. Folks, if you want to go over to patreon.com/weirdthings, well, I'd encourage you to. 'Tis the season for giving, specifically for
us.
you to give us money. But in return, you're not gonna. This isn't some charity case. No. You get stuff in return, including your own RSS feed that gets the After Things podcast to you in the podcatcher of your choice as fast as possible.
Easy and early, baby. Easy and early.
Yeah. So here's the deal. You hear us talk about it, but I would love for somebody to maybe tweet at Andrew or Brian or Bryce or myself and just let us know that you indeed took the Weird Things Patreon challenge. You were not a patron. Then you went on over to patreon.com/weirdthings.
Mm-hmm.
And then let us know how easy it was to just copy that RSS feed, the custom RSS feed that you get into the podcatcher of your choice. Because I'll tell you what, I've done it for other patrons, Patreons that I've been a part of. It was the easiest thing possible, and I think it is probably the most revolutionary element of that platform for podcast fans like me and you, friends.
That's right.
So head on over there, patreon.com/weirdthings.
Gentlemen, I'm going to send this link to Bryce, which I should have done, I don't know, before the show. But I talk a lot about certain technologies, things like that I'm excited about, because there are things that I think are not quite in the media radar yet, but keep coming up that are very, very, very exciting. And I think that a couple years from now, we'll be like, oh my God, this is kind of, this is a big deal. And that's sort of what we've always tried to do in Weird Things is we were talking about SpaceX before the cool kids were. We talk about these things because we think they're neat. And I'm going to send Bryce something, which is, I've talked about this before, AI, there's really cool kinds of things doing in AI, in artificial intelligence. And one of these things is there's technologies where you're basically creating apps and applications and stuff that are trying to recognize the images around them. Like we've talked about, GANs is a technology, generative adversarial networks, where basically one AI says, hey, I can tell you if it's an image or not. And the other AI is like, hey, I can generate random noise and finally make it look like an image if you tell me if it's an image or not. And then it creates really cool and scary things. I found a cool application of that was ganbreeder.app. If you go take a look at GANBREEDER.app, if you take a look there, somebody's doing sort of an art project where a neural net generates these images. It's not copy pasting.
I have seen GANBreeder. I've seen this. Like you feed it an image and it will make like derivative images. Is that correct? Or are these
this can start. This will start with seed images, and then here you go. Like he's trying to figure out what you find the most interesting. And so, you click on like these are looking like bizarro warped people kind of thing.
Yeah, they're like
you click on it.
They're landscapes, and it looks like almost they look like humanoid figures, but they definitely are not humans.
Because it doesn't know.
It doesn't know what a human is.
Yeah, the neural network picks up certain features in photos of people, but it doesn't pick up all the features. And one of the things that happens too, the thing you have to think about in a lot of these neural networks that are doing this, they're looking at the whole image. They're not separating heads and bodies and stuff like this.
Right.
And that's why it's crazy. But if you go to ganbreeder.app and you keep clicking it, sometimes I've seen nightmarish things of like fur dog babies and stuff and just.
So I pulled up. I've got the video from the article that you sent me.
Yeah, I'll get to that in a second. Yeah,
okay.
I just want to throw the GANbreeder thing out there. But yeah, that's a basic level thing where, like as Bryce says, it takes an image or takes images, and the computer says, "I think I know what this is." Now you can take a bunch of images and a bunch of objects, and you can separate them, and the AI can go, "Okay, I know this is this third of thing." Oh my God, look at that thing!
Oh, it's like a baby's
like a
face
troll
on an
baby
elbow. Ooh. Oh my goodness. Oh, this thing's crazy. Okay, this is turning into body horror.
It's like a Cronenberg dimension there.
Yeah.
But a cool, less nightmare-inducing version of this is NVIDIA, which is one of they've been pioneering a lot of this research because most of this sort of really cool processing is done on GPUs, and NVIDIA's been really pushing the envelope. So you can use GPU units that are optimized. You can run TensorFlow and other systems for doing neural networks on it. NVIDIA said, hey, let's take a bunch of images of cities and cars and vehicles. They built a neural network that was able to generate basically a driving type game, a simulator game. And you look at this and you can kind of go, well, the graphics aren't the best or whatever, but you have to understand this is not being created by a system that has models of cars programmed into it or cityscapes or anything. It literally took a bunch of footage or images of cities, and then it constructed this entirely in a neural network. So it's working the same way when you have a dream and you imagine stuff.
Right.
So there's a video we can see of this. So you have to understand this is all being generated by something that was never programmed in to understand what cars or buildings or anything else were. It just looked at a bunch of images of these things, and now it's creating a virtual world for a driving simulator.
And my understanding is that this is AI generated, but this was generated ahead of time. This is not running all real time, right? It's not immediately procedural.
Yeah, I think they used the AI to generate the environment or generate the video of this. But the idea is that you could basically in the future, you could be playing, you could play a video game that could like completely generate an entire city out of a small data set.
So I guess they trained it on footage of people driving around cityscapes, urban cities.
Wow.
And
so this is just all created based on that footage. They train the AI to say, this is what driving looks like. This is what the motion looks like. This is what landscaping and cars and everything. And I guess we're looking at this video where the only thing that was done was that they did separate out certain things.
It recognized what trees were, what curbs were, what different cars were.
Yeah. At the very least, they said that they are different, right? That they are their own distinct things.
But now we're watching someone do the Gangnam Style.
So what they did is they had a model dance Gangnam Style, then they had his researcher do a poor version of that, and then they had the neural network went back, kind of like deep fake, went back. And if you watch that guy dance again, you'll notice the distortion around him. And what it did is it made his body move like she's moving.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah. So anyhow, that's kind of a, AI procedurally generated games. I mean, that's sort of just the idea of the, it's scary because like I'm convinced we're in a simulation now. I'm like, it's talk me out of it. Talk me off the virtual ledge here, guys.
Yeah. Change my mind with a mug of coffee.
Yeah.
So man, that's wild. And it, for the way NVIDIA is sort of positioning it right now is that it's going to, lower development costs of interactive works and all, but you could do some really wild stuff with this. Once you mix in not just AI generated, but AI synthesis, kind of like the GAN breeder thing of like, okay, what this stuff looks like now, build a new make of car, right? Create a new car brand. You have all this data of these other cars, these other models. That's insane, man.
Well, yeah, we've seen that with Faces, where you program in, you put in 1,000 photos of famous actors and models, and the computer will generate faces. And it was funny because I clicked on an article. It was an AI article, and I just, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a bunch of these faces. I'm like, oh, what's this, some celebrity recognition system? And then I look, I'm like, oh, no, those were all GAN-generated faces. None of them was a celebrity you'd recognize, but out of the corner, as a grouping, you look out in the corner of your eye like, oh, famous people. And you're like, wait, no, they're not. But there's certain features and stuff that fit in with famous faces.
Yeah, wow.
It's a fun rabbit hole, and it's becoming more and more accessible. And I implore anybody out there who has an inkling of interest in computer sciences or computers in general, take a look around at some of the courses on TensorFlow, AI, neural network. A lot of this sounds way more intimidating than it actually. I mean, it's high level stuff to really grasp it, which I don't. But to play around with it and make cool stuff. Oh, what'd you find there, Bryce?
So this is from the creator of GAN Breeder at _Joel Simon on Twitter. This is just a collection of images that he got from using GAN Breeder of images that sort of look like knitwear or like royal like vestments and garments. He has another one up here of like, these are all not procedurally generated, but GAN generated jewelry, just pieces of jewelry.
That's amazing. That's fascinating. And this is where when this is why you listen to Weird Things, because at some point someone's gonna be like, oh, like the hottest new advertising company is generating these things in a way never seen possible. Like, look at all these mock-ups that were created. Like, we're science focused and all that. I mean, talk about, like, you know, somebody mentioned a racing style game, right? But imagine that the idea there is you're not memorizing maps.
Yeah.
You know, you are not the skill is not in like, you know, the muscle memory. It is being generated at random, and there's no way for the human brain to really articulate exactly what that will be as you run through it. That's insane.
And a sufficiently advanced one, you like in an open world game, you get out of your car, you walk into a Dunkin' Donuts, you fill out a job application, and you get a job at Dunkin' Donuts, and there's employees that are procedurally generated. You know, the AI creates these people, and you know, like, it could. In enough data and enough understanding of that stuff, you could have, you know, we could start building worlds in there that would feel extremely realistic, as real as ours. And that's why this is where the simulation argument comes from, is we just watched at a simulated city that doesn't exist in any form, as far as there's no code in the sense of, like, you know, we'll put the 3D models here or whatever. It's just a neural network dreamed the city up. And this is the Pong version. You know, this is the Pong version, and we're just only a couple years into using GPUs and stuff to do this. Where are we going to be in 10 years? What will this be in 20 years?
And this stuff can be used. This could be used really practically pretty soon, right? Like take the like city game example, right? You could use an AI generator during development to have it create all your pedestrians for you, right? You go, you take a bunch of photos of people, and you say, hey, these are some meshes of these actual human people. Now go build more humans. Or clothes, right? Designing clothes for all these character models. Like, a lot of little things that help make games feel fuller in small ways, not even necessarily in big, you know, geometry ways like this of designing the city, but you could use a lot of this practically really soon, I bet.
Yeah, and I'm excited about, you know, for research points of view, you know, let's build a version of the Roman Empire, and let's see what happens if, you know, we find a cure for cholera. What would have happened to the expansion of the remote towns? I have no idea if there would be, you know, whatever. But the point is, you could do really cool kind of experimental stuff. And here's an exciting thing is, you know, part of what some of these systems do at the core is they look for patterns. They try to find patterns that maybe we're unaware of, and it tries to make guesses on what will the outcomes of these patterns be. And researchers took, they used DeepMind, which is, you know, remember DeepMind, you know, the whole, you know, beat Go, and then, you know, was able to do with a version of it that never had any prior gameplay knowledge, just understood the basic rules. They used DeepMind's technology to predict protein modeling. Protein modeling is one of the really super complex things in biology, because you have this big ball of protein, and you're trying to figure out how this thing's going to fold, because the way it folds describes how it's going to interact inside your body, how it'll react to drugs and stuff, because you can know the sequence of a protein, but that doesn't necessarily tell you the shape of the protein. So what they were able to do is basically to look at the sequence of a protein and then figure out how the thing was going to, the shape of it. Wow. So, you know, this was 3D models of proteins, and AlphaFold, that's instead of, you know, AlphaGo, is the DeepMind's AI generates. They were far more accurate than the other model before.
So we're looking at an image here. The top row is the actual way that this protein unfolded, and the bottom is average predicted distance. So I'm guessing this is what it believed that the protein would look like, and it looks really similar. They're not the same,
you see a term up there. You'll see on the left coordinate, you'll see ground truth. And so in AI, ground truth is used to basically mean the thing that we know is true, the baseline. Yeah. So that was like, I think maybe crystallography or whatever of a protein crystal, showing us what it looked like. And then below was just looking at that sequence, what the computer predicted it would look like. Kind of awesome.
Wow. That's because it used to be, you know, and I'm sure it's still around, but like folding at home, right? Which was just trying to throw as much processing power, not randomly, but as much power as it could to try to figure out these different protein
Yeah,
shapes.
and it's going to be funny too because I think we're going to sit back and look at and those setting home, folding home are neat things to do, but we're gonna. I have a feeling that probably one NVIDIA or Titan GPU processor right now running for a couple days probably to be able to do just about all of the processing that we're able to do on everybody's system back in the day, which is not a reason not to do it now, but it's just the way these things accelerate.
Wow.
Yes. Yes. As pointed out in the chat room, like, yeah, it's one of the big mysteries about how we're all made up. We're this DNA is this wonderful blueprint, but protein's the thing that sort of makes it happen. And how are proteins folded together is the difference between, nerve cells, skin, hair, everything, how things behave, whatever. And so it's not enough that we have this DNA map, DNA sort of says, hey, now create these proteins that go do this. And then that's the, profit, that dot is the really, 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 really critical part. And so being able to understand how the heck these proteins are functioning and what they're doing is absolutely amazing. I mean, not, attempting to. So.
Yeah. We've talked before on the show about a similar medical diagnoses algorithm or machine learning tool, right? Where it would look at like your eye vessels. It would look at a photo of just your eyes, and it would be able to tell if you had, what was it, like if you were at risk for diabetes or something in that vein.
Looking at retina images, are of that,
It's fascinating to think that we're able to put a bunch of data into a box and the box will just figure it out.
Yes, the hard part, of course, is figuring out how much data you need to put into the box and how good you ask your questions. And that the job of a data scientist is like 90% getting the data, and making sure there's enough data there to find a signal to it. And one of the things we're doing now is we look for the things that are easiest are data sets where you have like A and B. This is A, this is B. Understand the difference. Now we're going to throw in a bunch of things and where it's clear. Those edge cases, it gets harder in trying to find fidelity. And, I've known from my own, dumb experiments of like how hard it is to, take, I think there's information that's the signal here. And then you find out, not enough. But yeah, I mean, that's, with anything that you have a human look at, anything you have a human look at now and say, I think it's this, or I think it's that, and they are reliably good at this, which sometimes they're not as good as we think they even in institutional settings. Anything a human does that where they compare A versus B or whatever is a great thing now for AI to do when it comes to image stuff. It's just the AIs, whenever we've thrown them at those data sets, they end up being way better. And you're going to see that from lab results, to financial analysis, which is just things you can do in the lab alone.
Yeah, very cool.
So let's move on. I got a spooky one for you.
Oh,
we love the spooky ones here.
All right, guys, I'm gonna send you on a plane trip.
Oh, hey,
all
free
right.
plane trip.
I love planes. Planes
Hey,
are great.
Justin, buckle up.
Oh, I'll go ahead and pay attention to the exits in case of a water landing.
All right, so you guys show up early, like you get ahead of everybody. You get on board your plane, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you like on board your plane. You're like a little tired, maybe.
On time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I got your first class tickets, by the way. You're up first.
Oh,
thank
great!
you.
Wait. How long is the flight?
It's gonna be about a 5-hour flight.
Oh, it's good.
Okay.
You can really get your use out of first class if it's over a couple hours. That means you're probably going to get like 2 meals. You can really sink into those seats.
Yeah, get some drinks going.
Now, as you get on board the flight, and it's like, hey guys, there's like a little underfilled like first class. I think we're the only ones in there. You guys can sit wherever you want. Do you guys sit next to each other, or do you like space out?
I would say. No, you go.
Yeah, well,
awkward question time.
In general, I would say there's not much of a benefit to spreading out in first class because the first class seats are like they have armrests on them, so you can't even do like in coach you could like lay down across 3. That's really not an option in a lot of first class configuration. So I would say I might as well sit next to old Bryce.
That's good, because I don't think I've ever flown first class, so I wouldn't have. I would have said, oh, same row but opposite sides of the aisle. You take one half of the aisle. You take that aisle or that side. I'll take this side.
That actually might be the way to do it. Is just
'Cause
so
you
we,
can
so we
spread
both have an
out,
aisle seat.
put your stuff
yeah,
around,
so
yeah.
we can both get up and go to the bathroom as fast as possible.
Okay, yeah.
All right. So you guys sit back there. Do you like decide to just take a nap first or what?
You know, in general, a flight strategy for me is you want to stay up past the first service, because first service, whether it be for a drink or just some water, that'll happen pretty quick. And also they're
Right.
going to get you, if there's any kind of lunch or something, they're going to get that order, and then you can just know for them to just nudge you when you go to sleep. And at that point, you can take a little naparoo, and next thing you know, you wake up and there's food in front of you.
Yeah, I always feel like
So-
a chump when I fall asleep, and then I have to. Oh, can I get some drinks? Like an hour into the flight.
So flight attendant comes by, gives you guys your drinks. Their captain's like, all right, we're taking off now. Taking off. And you take off.
All right, we're taking off.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It does bear mentioning also that when you're sitting in first class, you can definitely. I have watched somebody get to up to as many as 3 drinks in them before they take off.
Before
Like-
takeoff.
Oh yeah, no. They will. They number one, for real. I don't know how it's not like an actionable legal position that, normally at a bar or something, you can get cut off pretty easily, and certainly if you are really out of control, they will turn around the plane or land the plane. But in general, man, those first class flight attendants don't give a hoot.
Well, part of it is because when somebody pays for that, they don't want to have to deal. They would rather deal with a slightly belligerent drunk that they can usher off the plane than somebody screaming, "I paid for this, and you're not going to give me
Exactly. Yeah. No. So it doesn't matter, man. If you're throwing them back, they will keep your cup filled.
In fact,
So-
I wonder if we have an extra ticket available. Question mark? Because we've
I'm
got.
sorry, I'm late.
Oh,
I'm late.
look, we just
I'm
made it
showing
into
up
the
just
flight.
in time. What is that? I'm sorry. Oh my God, I just ran. I'm sorry. I got into this huge argument with the TSA about the Fourth Amendment and whether or not the right of people to be secure in their possessions necessarily does it constitute an invasive search. But I'm here. Hey, where are we going, guys?
There we go. Brian disassembling his fife and rubbing the perspiration off his pocket constitution makes his way into the first class
TSA
cabin.
says, this is a privately run facility, and we are only contracted out by the airlines to do this. You have the right to fly out. Brian's like, shutting the door. Can't hear you. So you just made it onto the flight. You guys have first class all to your own. Do you
Okay.
sit next to Justin or Bryce, or do you just go get your own little pod?
Hey guys, I'm sorry I got here so late. Where are we going? Do we even know where we're going?
We don't know
We're
don't know where
dealing
we're
with
going. We
where
know
we're
it's
sitting,
we know
All right.
that it's a 5-hour flight.
Well, okay. The then in that case, it seems like the most comfortable thing is for us to all sit in the aisle staggered, so that way you're able to talk across the aisle. But then also at any point you just slide over and you just turtle up and go to sleep.
That's where Bryce was. So I think we're all in
That's where-
agreement.
yeah.
We're all zipper style in the aisle.
Aisle seats for everyone.
Yay!
So now here you are. The flight's taken off. Okay. You guys are chilling out, first class all to yourself, right? Which there's only like 8 seats in there. So, and it's an Airbus A319. So actually in your first class seat, one of you guys have to sit next to one of the other ones.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, right on.
Or front and back, whatever. You can do front, back, somebody left. So yeah, you're all, you're chilling out, you're talking, it's like, hey, what's up? It's all cool. And then, who gets up first?
I always go to the bathroom before I even sit down. So I'm in theory like I'm asleep Yeah, no,
I have definitely found myself looking for the first possible moment that I won't get yelled at for getting up to go to the bathroom.
Oh, really?
Like that is definitely something that I have found myself doing.
I if I can help it, I don't want to get out of that seat until I land.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so I will say that I am going to be the one who gets up first then.
All right, I'm going to send you a photo, Justin, of what you get up, by the way, and you see.
Oh, okay. So he's getting he's unbuckling his belt. He's standing up. Ooh, stretch, a little stretch, getting out into the aisle.
You want to know what else I'll do? I'll do one of these first before I even get up, putting my palms flat on the overhead, right, and then I'm gonna get up, and specifically there's nobody else in that first class cabin. You want to know what? I'm gonna give myself a little stretch right there in the aisle.
Do a little
get those hammies a little limber.
Do some small
right.
lunges.
I just sent you a photo of what you saw.
Meanwhile, I'm cashed the FO. Like, maybe you could see my half-finished Hearthstone game in front of me as I've dozed off listening to Jack Resider's Darknet Diaries, explaining to me why I should be terrified of everything.
So
you walked up in there. Brian's asleep. Bryce is. You said you're sleeping too?
I'm watching something on my iPad. I'm sure.
So is this if we are in the front cabin?
This is what you. I mean, I just couldn't find that photo.
I wake
but
up
this is
just
what you look
long
back
enough
and
to
stuff.
take off my shoes and fall right back to sleep.
I hope I'm on the opposite side of the zipper.
I wedged my clean white socked feet into the armrest between the ones in front of me.
Yeah, I'm taking a picture of Brian for passenger shaming, so I can send it into the passenger shaming.
Like, why does that sock look like a red devil with yarn for a face?
I will say, at least he's wearing socks.
I've got my my hoodie like draped over my head, like I'm ashamed of my face, and then meanwhile I'm just enjoying this dark warmth of my own breath, keeping me all cozy and sleepy.
Now, what I've seen is disturbing. Is this the rest? Like, so I can still see Brian and Bryce, Andrew.
Yeah, you just turned around and you looked towards the back, and this is what you saw,
guys. So
Brian's asleep, you gotta wake him up.
I kicked.
Do you
Brian
wake him up?
I kick Brian in the hoodie. And,
I was like, Fourth Amendment. What?
Quick question. When we sat down in first
class,
we get on first, right? Do you guys remember passengers getting on the plane after us?
No, I do. I mean, I
was last on the plane. So
Yeah.
I
So
just
Brian
assume it's
wouldn't
full in the
have.
back. They have that shame curtain, the poverty curtain that keeps us from the rest of the hoi polloi back there.
right. No,
Yeah.
I assume they're back there scratching their butts, playing fiddles,
Well,
eating
okay.
rats, whatever the lesser folks do. Probably falling in love, having sex in Model Ts.
Probably bad for a pressurized environment, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, if they promise that, Coach, geez, what do we expect?
What are we for? Yeah.
I mean, what we get is the smug knowledge that we're not them.
But I feel like I remember sitting down in vivid detail, and I don't remember a whole lot of seeing anyone else come into the plane. Do we have the plane to ourselves? Do we have extra rows?
I'm gonna go ahead and ask for the two of them to go take a look in the back and see if they see what I see.
All right, so I get up and
In the back,
I
or-
pull back
Yeah,
the
one
poverty
second, let me-
curtain and I look at I hold my nose visibly as if to protect my delicate lungs against any miasmas that maybe are associated with with the coach passengers.
Yeah, I'm
Jesus.
yeah.
Brian begins explaining, that there's science to this on who belongs in first class and who doesn't.
Oh wait, hold on.
Now what the heck?
Hold on. I just let me take
This hey guys, I don't know if it's just me. This plane looks empty as hell.
oh shit. Whoops.
See, some of us said hell got away with it.
I was like, oh my God, I've always wanted to do this. And I start running up and down the aisle, high-stepping comically. And it's like, I say, have you ever seen a man jump 1,000 feet at once? And I do a standing broad jump forward and a little back of the envelope calculation to figure out just how many feet I jumped in that moment.
All right. So, I mean, this is...
So, boys, it seems as if we got on a plane, and Bryce and I seem to remember that people got on the plane, and yet now as we all have visually confirmed, and Brian has high jumped for confirmation, there ain't nobody on this plane.
Wait, did we remember people getting on, or did we not? I thought...
You probably maybe dreamed it,
Oh.
Bryce.
Oh. Maybe I fell asleep before takeoff.
I turn around and I explain to you guys, hey, man, I heard of this. In fact, every so often planes have to run empty because they have to stick to routes, and maybe we're just on an unpopular route. In fact, one flight attendant said that it was just the crew. It was just the pilots and the flight staff. So the door was open. They were just hanging out, and at some point... You know, what are you going to do on this 3-hour flight? The captain invites them to sit in the co-pilot seat, and at one point takes his hands off and lets them actually fly the plane for a little bit.
Oh, that's cool.
I
would have been
believe
a
that
while
one was
ago.
the fourth. That was the fourth attendant.
Yes. I restrained myself.
So, and Andrew bought us these tickets. This is not like we snuck onto this plane. Andrew bought us tickets to somewhere we don't even know where we're landing yet. I had to pack hot and cold.
Oh, you packed.
I had to pack.
I mean, we had different styles of travel.
Brian's like, seems aggressive. Next thing you know, you'll tell me you have a hotel room booked.
So is there one of those little on-screen those little displays inside the back of the chairs? Can we
There is.
can we figure out where we're going?
Yeah, let's call up our current location.
Yeah, maybe we're just going somewhere where no one
Not very
is.
popular,
We're-
right?
Yeah, we're going to whatever Newfoundland or
Um,
Ohio.
I don't relax, Bryce.
Okay.
You did decide to pack warm.
Oh, okay.
You're leaving Bangkok, and you're heading for the island of Koh Samui.
Oh, of
That
course.
sounds delightful.
Yeah.
I bet they have. Do you think they've discovered pina coladas? I mean, they've already been making the little umbrellas forever, so I assume they know about the drink.
Yeah,
Now,
I like to
the
imagine
fun
they
part
don't.
is
What do you
if we
think they use
deviate a
these
little to the
umbrellas
right, you're going to head over to the Andaman Islands where you have, the people that we didn't talk about that story yet. But anyhow, so yeah, you're just, kind of over, the ocean, kind of like, where the lost airplane got lost.
for? Oh, are we guinea pigs?
Well, I don't see why we would be. You know what? Here, I ring the flight attendant call button. Ding.
This woman shows up and politely asks you in Thai how she may help you.
So she doesn't speak any English?
Usually I do, but this staff doesn't.
Okay, so realizing she doesn't speak English, I just mime Heineken. I say, Heineken, please.
Right.
Because I realize
Brings
it's
you
a
Heineken.
bust.
Okay. I mean, we're on this plane, y'all. I don't like. Are we gonna get phased out? Are we gonna get lost?
No, I mean
I have a possible theory here, guys. I think that we might be on a famous route, maybe a route that was troubled in the past, that maybe not as many people want to ride on this route anymore. Maybe a South Pacific flight that was famously lost for a couple days.
Whoa, wait, like the Malaysia Air flight that
plane, the
went
missing
down was
plane?
missing, yeah.
Which
But-
I don't
but-
think they
Yeah.
found. I don't think they ever found that plane.
Yeah, but But do you think? Well, I mean,
Is this
I guess
the plane? Did we find the plane?
No,
Did we find the plane?
I would like to believe that we're just on that route, but everyone's scared of it now.
Brian, ask the flight attendant if they found that plane.
I doing my best miming. I with my hands I make a plane. I was like I look at her and we establish eye contact, and I'm just like and I point like this plane, and he was like.
Okay, I would not tell
and I put my hand like in a salute, looking left, looking right.
Oh,
like,
and then meanwhile, I'm
shrug.
doing background. I'm doing Brian. You keep going, and I just start doing background noises.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like like ding 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 ding.
She taps her nose. she taps her nose like she gets it.
Okay.
She goes back to the front galley, and she comes back with 2 Heinekens.
Probably the best response to someone making a plane exploding hand signal in a foreign language that you could get.
Oh, where is it?
I remember that press conference. Ladies and gentlemen, where is it?
Actually, this has a happy. This is a happy. It was just sort of kind of a fun story. This woman, Latsami Makadu, she showed up for a Bangkok Airways flight from Bangkok to the island of Koh Samui, and it's an Airbus A319. And she realizes she's the only passenger on that, and they hit turbulence at a point, and she's kind of like, "Man, this sucks. Like I'm gonna, other than the crew, but they don't count. I'm gonna die alone."
Oh, that's amazing though.
Safely. So it's just this sort of like, but like, yeah, you're like, wow, I'm the only one on this flight. What's going on?
It's actually funny because this time of year, you actually see a fair amount of these kinds of flights because you have gigantic busy travel spikes, which oftentimes means that there are not as many people going the opposite direction. So certain times, like I was on a flight once on Christmas night going out to Ohio because I was going to meet Ashley out there, but I had work obligations that kind of kept me. But it was kind of amazing how like absolutely deserted a major gigantic flight is because a lot of those planes still got to be in position to take everybody else the next day when it's the busiest flight day of the year. So you wind up getting a lot of these things that's when you can really like fly really cheap, and B, have creepy experiences like this lady did on her ghost plane.
So a little bit further off to the west of where that route was is the Andaman Islands. And recently there was headlines because an American missionary, John Allen Chow, decided that he was going to visit the island and talk to the indigenous people who live there.
Oh boy.
Now, these are the people that have had like almost zero contact with anybody else. I believe the same group, when there was the tsunami came through there, they sent helicopters to go check out to make sure these people are okay, and they went and threw spears at the helicopters. They are extremely private, and I use the term even xenophobic, and not without cause too. They've had some problems, I guess, that tribe. They've had other invaders have gone through there, killed them, massacred them, whatever, and so for them, that culturally speaking, anytime somebody comes from the outside, it's bad news, and so they do whatever they can. And there have been, stories about them, killing or whatever people who try to come there. This guy, John, seems like a nice guy, but was going to go there to do some missionary work. He said that his plan was he wanted to go declare Jesus to these people. And he actually, before he left instructions. He had some fishermen take him there. You guys might think I'm crazy, even all this he said, but I think it's worth it to declare Jesus to these people. Please do not be angry at them or at God if I get killed. And it looks like he probably got killed.
So he had this was not his first encounter with them, right? Like he had almost died in a previous attempt.
Yeah, he had some fishermen pull him up close to the shore, and he shouted to them in English, which probably not helpful. My name is John. I love you, and Jesus loves you. Jesus Christ gave me the authority to come to you. He didn't get any closer, but then he decided to go back, and he thought, he questioned his diary, is this island Satan's last stronghold where none have heard or even heard the chance to hear your name? And so he decided to go ashore there and...
obviously religion a bit of a touchy subject, but I will say, as somebody who has never, nor have I considered going on missionary work, that there is much missionary work that is done.
A lot of wonderful stuff.
Yeah, with great benefit to a lot of people. This seems imprudent, and obviously you never want to speak ill of the dead, but man, that definitely seems like there's a difference between getting the word of God out and getting yourself killed.
So, question. Because
Yeah.
we've talked about this before. Here you have this group of people that's the very isolated group of people. As far as we know, in these isolated, the mountain or island populations is also like a genetic term. You have genetic problems because there's not interbreeding with outside. You have high infant mortality rates. You often have very high homicide rates, etc. And where of late we try to take a hands-off approach. They're like, hey, that's them, let them have their way. Now, my question comes in from there, and I don't have like a ready-made answer, is I'm like, I understand why we treat a society as a whole, our group as a whole like that, but man, if I were a kid born into a society like that or a group like that, I would sure love to have access to the rest of the world's knowledge. I'd sure like to know what's out there beyond my little island. And is it ethical for us to be like, no, your parents and the older people here have decided this is your way of life. We're not going to give you the opportunity to know what's out there, or is it not?
Yeah, that was we did a family trip out to Hawaii, and that's a real problem. Not in a totally isolationist way, but there's one island in Hawaii that is only occupied by people from that island, and guess what? The kids are finding out that there are cell phones and that there's culture and that there's a futuristic world all around them, and they don't allow any outsiders into the island, and this culture is going to fade away because given their own free choice, given the understanding that there's an outside world filled with opportunity and a bunch of interesting stuff, all the kids are leaving. I on the one hand, like, yeah, real bummer, because that was a data point of cultural diversity that I think was valuable in general. But at what cost do you get to say, no, we're the civilized outside world, and we're going to let you die of these diseases, and we're going to let you have life be nasty, brutish, and short because we sleep better at night knowing that there's a more diverse cultural world around us. And even more so in the case of this, it's like, we're going to keep you ignorant, illiterate, cut off from the outside world, believing nonsense, living, savage lives.
But if this is a tribe that fiercely rejects
and
all of those, that seems like their prerogative.
And
Well,
you're right, because
well,
that bumps up against my
South
libertarian
Africa
mindset.
used that excuse for apartheid, Bryce. So now you're an apartheid apologist.
Oh,
How does
geez.
it feel?
Well,
you
I
know?
I don't like that.
No, well, again, I'm using an extreme example because we have other examples of what we say, well, that's different because those are modern people and subject to our rule. I mean, that's my thing.
But let's also understand in both of the examples of for modernity, right? We are saying that it is our decision whether or not they get access to this. And I do think that there is a line between making it as welcoming, making modernity as welcoming as possible to those that might want to defect, and saying that there is a moral imperative that we must bring modernity to them. And I do think that it is a difficult question to ask. Like, where is that line? Where is our imperative to say, like, is it something where we should just be, throwing, with a catapult, throwing penicillin like into their camps with the instructions on like, hey, if they get fevers, then inject this, right? Or are we just to say, hey, look, well, let's set up a sign saying, in case sick, bring here. We'll make you better.
There are arguments against doing anything because the history has not been kind to, indigenous peoples when, more technologically advanced people come in contact, and, the history of the Americas is a more recent example of the history of every other continent people have been on, where there are waves of people that came in later and decimated, even starting from our mother continent, Africa. This has been the tradition. One group's here, one other group comes in there, and it's not say, oh, it's good. It's the normal thing, and it's a cautionary tale to say, hey, and that's why we sort of take this hands-off approach, because we look back at the track record of like, hey, we'll help these people modernize, and then flash forward programs like you had in Australia, where Aboriginal kids were moved from homes, whatnot. Native Americans in the United States, same thing happened. Just forcefully separating children from families. And these things are scary, bad things that we try to avoid. And I understand the reason for caution, but my question is there an alternative? Is there, these people don't have radios, so doing a radio-free America is exactly maybe the best way. You're not going to reach them there, but is there if Earth was part of, if we were in the middle of a, galaxy or universe filled with other more advanced civilizations and stuff, I would want to know, as this person who is this, as a kid, as an adult here, part of this, or, this world, I would love to know if there's something bigger and more advanced out there with better ideas or more ideas, because as a humanist, I'd want to know. Not everybody wants that, but I would like to know. I would like to know this, and I would be upset to find out they're like, no, we decided. I'm totally against the Prime Directive, guys. By the way, you can bring up Star Trek all you want, and I think it's a horribly. There's a reason why they always break the Prime Directive, because it's a very flawed premise. My point is that I would want to know. I would want to know, is there more out there? Because otherwise, you're leaving us at the mercy of the people in power, the people in charge. And it's so.
I wonder if they have the means, because I don't know. I guess I don't know enough about this tribe to say whether they do or don't know what the state of the world is, or what the state of humanity is outside of the island. But I also imagine if they had the means to get off, or to whatever, to find to venture outward, that there would be instances of that happening.
Maybe, and but it's hard to know. Does that mean that it decides the will and fate of everybody else? You have in Utah, there are little town stuff where once women are old enough, they're married off to the town elders, and they're not really given much of an understanding of what's going on outside the world, and that's, to me, that's depressing, because they don't really know. They're not really told that they have a choice or know this. And my point is not to the old people who say, yeah, we want to live this way, but to the young people who were never given a choice.
Right.
So, but yeah, but I don't think that it is a simple answer to say, all right, so what satisfies our moral requirement? Is it simply to exist? Is it to advertise? Is it to intervene? And those are all, very, very different things.
Well, it's like when you find out, your next door neighbor has, kept his kids shut in the basement, and people are like, it's different. I'm like, those are humans. These are humans. And we can say, well, the law, okay, so we let laws dictate our ethics, or should our ethics dictate the laws? And I don't have any answers to this, but I think it's worth asking. I think my frustration comes from some sociologists and some anthropologists are like, well, we want to preserve this way of life. It's like, it's wonderful to be in the position to have that power over another group of people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that there is, because then on the other end, and this is to Brian's sense of human rights on what we should be allowed and shouldn't be allowed to do. There is the question of all right, well, even if you're looking at so a way of life that, I guess, on what level do we say your way of life is degrading the larger human condition, that you have ignored these advancements?
I mean, I don't know that we should ever say that, because everybody should have a right to choice. My thing is saying, hey, let people have knowledge that there's alternatives. That's it.
Sure. And that's probably where I would come down as well. That it is our job to advertise. It is our job to create, just even if they are the faint scent of modernity that those who find it interesting can follow, and then once they are here, to welcome them. But it's hard to say. I think we can all agree that unfortunately, this young man's way of going about things was probably not
ideal.
right.
No, I don't.
That's the real bummer. Is like at the end of the day, like that's awful all around. There's nothing good. There's no good guys in this situation.
Or I
guess
bad.
everybody's good guys. I mean, it's like I don't know. It's like nobody. I can't think of any way to be happy about the way this happened.
Oh no, I think he wanted what he thought was best for this group of people, and I think that he thought, I feel sad. I feel very, very sad, and that we lost somebody who, seemed like probably a very good human being. And now the question is, they've asked the organization he's with, like, how much did you know about this? Did you know that he was going to do this? And that's where I want to know, like, were there other culpable people there, like, yeah, this is a great idea. Let's.
Well, and also, like, I'm sure in the grand mythology, the legends, the history of great missionaries, in the early days, all of them went into situations just like this, and some of them, brought the good word to these people and saved lives and made them civilized, or whatever the stories are. I mean, it's like, it is a double standard to lionize the pioneers of it and to demonize the latecomers to it. This guy had what he perceived as the last chance to be the last of the generation of great missionaries who went into hostile territories and won them over.
Yep. And there are some people who did some great works, by bringing, literacy and other things there, medicine and stuff. And there are missionary groups around the world doing good causes like this. There's, good and bad to it, and a lot of good. So the question was asked in the chat room, says, would I like it for an alien race to come here and tell us how to live? And the answer is no to that, or no to this. I don't think we should be going in there telling these people how to live. That's not, if you come away with that thinking that's my position, then either I haven't explained or you're not listening. I want just to give them access, internet access. I want, if the aliens are out there, I want them to say, like, hey, here's our Wikipedia. Hey, here's our history here's our stuff. Take a look at this. Make up your own mind. I'm always about making up your own mind, not keeping information or knowledge away from people. That's what I'm against. I'm against saying, oh, no, we're going to protect you by not letting you know about these other things. I think that if you're religiously inclined and you're a young person, you should read other religions. If you're politically inclined, you should study other political philosophies. That's all I want is, here's an opportunity. Maybe your way of life is great, but you would never know that you made the right decision if you didn't have access to other ways of living or knowing. So who can argue with that?
Nobody.
Great. Let's do picks.
Hey, man, I got a pick. Just got back on the Darknet Diaries train. Talked about it a little while ago. Jack Rhysider is putting together true tales from the dark side of the internet. And his most recent episode, stop me if this is a familiar subject to you, Justin, is about hacking the podcast charts and gaming the system. And he looks at a specific example of people who are offering a service on Fiverr to get you into the top 200 of iTunes podcasts for only $5, and it seems to work, and there's a lot of people doing it. And then it got him thinking, like, well, what other charts are there, and can those be gamed? And then he ends up looking at the New York Times bestseller list and all this other stuff. And it's a good meditation on the subject. Ultimately, I think he walked past what a conclusion that seems fairly transparent to me, which is Apple Podcasts. Part of the reason that their system is so gameable is because there's a lot of different podcatchers out there. There are a lot of different apps, whether it's Podcatcher or Stitcher or any number of other things. And I think ultimately Apple can only measure what happens on the Apple Podcast app. And as a percentage of all the people doing podcasts and everything, they just don't have a big enough sample size. So as a result, just 50 subscriptions a day is a big tick that gets you up, because all they can measure is the number of new subscriptions in a single set of hours.
Well, they can also do downloads.
They can, but
Now-
in the
now-
episode
yeah, now-
he explores whether or not that has any impact on it at all. So that's covered in the episode.
Does it?
Ultimately, his
surely-
conclusion is that it doesn't look like it does. It looks like it's just basically new subs, which is kind of what we understood it to be 11 years ago when or I guess 10 years ago when we did Operation Eye Scam and got a bunch of people to all hit subscribe at the same time.
Oh yeah, sure. And I think there's also an element of, or at least what I've heard from people beyond the wall, reviews also, at least at the time that I first had that conversation, is something that does factor into the algorithm, but nothing moves it like new subs. New subs is the biggest thing, and also I think it guards against stagnation at the top. It's like, it's exciting when there's if what you're trying to do is encourage discoverability, then you want chaos in the top 20 because there are new things to discover, and you can show social proof that, okay, well, people are really into this. So I have not listened to that yet, but I will also recommend an episode of that of Darknet Diaries that I think was before that. That was a very interesting look. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was now, but I remember the IRS, about the IRS breaches and how clever some of the scams that were run from it. Basically, they just used an insecure way that you could request somebody's form back and then refile somebody's taxes as yourself and collect their refund. And the extensive network that was created out of Nigeria of not only getting that information, but finding Craigslist patsies to file the claim and to pay them a portion of it and take the rest. But I think that show is A, very well done, and B, I love episodes like that are kind of gets into some of the dirt under the fingernails hacking element of like, oh cool, look, the hacking is in general, and InfoSec specifically is about finding the little seams in our world and exploiting them, and it's always interesting to see.
That's any of you guys been a victim of one of those IRS scams or anything like that?
I mean, they won't stop calling me when their creepy robot voice.
Yeah, I had a period where somebody, I think, filed or whatever false returns under my name, and it was like, it was frustrating because I couldn't get like a PIN code. I had to go through all these other hoops to be able to do that with, which was frustrating. And and then I'd get like, hey, we need another copy of your, I'd get like, you get the phone calls from like little legit, like, IRS numbers call up like, yeah, we show you reported this amount. I'm like, no, this is what I filed. Well, this was refiled here, and frustrating.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a really insecure system. Like they were it was effectively, it's like all they really needed at the time to get an old tax return from you for free online instantly was basic information that for somebody like Andrew or me or Brian with like Wikipedia pages and a trail of work online was fairly easy to find, way too easy to find.
Picks.
Hey, I got a pick. I've held off on this pick because it's a controversial show in my life. I know I've had many conversations with Andrew about it. The season finale is next week, and it is at this point that I am willing to recommend to you, dear listeners, that although imperfect, I find the new season of Doctor Who to be a very meaningful and important step forward in the franchise. Not only that, but a real indictment of specifically the last few seasons of the old leadership, the old guard. Here are things that I really like about this new season. Number one, it's more of a science fiction show and less of a science fantasy show. There's only so much that you're really gonna be able to push that line, considering it's about a magical person in a magical box that can kind of go anywhere. But at the very least, you can establish rules in your world and then not totally write yourself into corners that you have to fabricate ridiculous "we found the magic amulet" endings. Number 2, the Doctor is the most eccentric person in now her universe, which was something that was a big problem, I think, with the previous few seasons, where the entire universe was whackety schmackety and everybody had a funny one-liner and everybody was falling in love with each other and kissing, and it's like, okay, like it shows you how much the world matters more when this is a wacky person who comes into your life and now everybody else is normal and wondering what's happening while you go on this adventure. But there's also a couple other meaningful things. They've relied a lot less on CGI effects. It's a lot more practical stuff, and all the plots. I think that there's 3 companions in this season. They all have relatable arcs. Some I think have kind of fallen off more than others, but one of them is an older, an older guy who, whose wife has just died, and the whole season is, I think it's a great story that Doctor Who can tell of, now he's, he has a choice of either to keep following this crazy alien through time and space, but the option is I have to go home to an empty apartment and I have to deal with all that. And that's like, these are the kind of stories that you can tell in that universe that I think are lost when it's all about the Gaga. It's all about when are the Daleks going to come in, or let's put all the work into like, oh man, what a clever thing this clever character said or did, instead of, the episode that just aired kind of pays off a lot of what I had just kind of set up. And you can only really do that if you care about this character, you care about why they're there, and now you force, it seems like kind of basics, but the end of each episode involves stakes we understand and decisions being made by characters that we care about. Hey, it's not about whether or not you can get the master to cry in a soup bowl that came from some ancient a Gallifreyan cupboard or something. It's like, no, it's about whether or not this person's going to make a decision that impacts where things are going. So I do have criticisms, but I will keep it positive, and I will say that it is if you got burnt out from the sickly, sweet, and I would say poorly written last few episodes, this is a meaningful reboot of the series.
If I have not watched any Doctor Who, I've seen maybe half of an episode, randomly. Would you say this season is okay to start off with?
Yes, because it's a different showrunner. I think that they made a real big decision to kind of hit a reboot button on like, all right, we're not going to, somebody from last season's not just going to randomly show up and we're all going to act like we've seen them before. At some point that might happen, but it has not as to this point. So I would say, yeah, this would be a good time to jump back in.
I'm gonna go. Like, I gave up back because it would be like their characters I'd find annoying, and then they'd die off or go. I'd be like, finally, and then the character would show up again. I'm like, why are you doing this? I waited for them to leave, and now they're back. And
yeah, I think it's a little bit more X-Files and a little bit less Torchwood.
Cool. Thank God.
And that's I think where it'll always still be Doctor Who. It's never going to be as super creepy and weird. But there are moments in this season that are like genuinely like we're doing a horror series. This is a horror episode, and it should be scary. And even in times where there's a little bit more levity, there was it didn't really factor into the plot, but there were like gigantic flesh-eating moths in the last episode, and they were practical effects. They weren't CGI, and people are dying because of flesh-eating moths. And you're like, okay, cool. I can be scared of this. It's not, a weird CGI lizard who's going to wink at you. Although there's a talking character. All right. Anyway, well, it's fine.
Bryce?
I have a pick. So I've talked before about programming games like Human Resource Machine and 7 Billion Humans. So I found a new one over the weekend that I really liked, which kind of had a different take on it, which is called Exapunks. The idea for this one is that you are programming exas. So these are like little code machines, and each one can have different code. And you're making them travel around a network map and having them, pick up files, read the cursor, go, send the cursor to this person. It's really well made, and I think there's like a feeling of physicality to it. Like, I was playing 7 Billion Humans over the weekend also, and there's one where it's like, oh, I'm getting a fax, so just take all the data cubes and just put them all over the floor. Where this one actually has like kind of a heavy sort of narrative story of like, you are a former hacker and you're sick, and so you make a deal with some weird person, which is probably her machine, to like do hacks for this machine, and you will be given the money to get treatment medicine for the disease that you have. And they're playing with some interesting things of like, oh, well, the disease that you have turns people into computers. And so they're clearly like setting up for some big like organic mashup between those two ideas. But the other thing is that the way it teaches you, and there's some other games that do this, like I can't remember the name of it now, but the game actually presents like the code language of the world in zine format. So at various points in the game, you get zines, and they have like articles and a library of code. But the game actually has will let you can print out the zine, and if you use letter paper or A4 paper, you pick the thing and you print it out and you fold it and staple it, and you have like the physical thing with you,
like your copy of 2600.
Yeah, so it's fun in like, it really embraces kind of this aesthetic that it's trying to do, and I think it seems like it has kind of a high degree of difficulty for one of these programming games. This is from Zachtronics, who I believe they did Shenzhen IO, and they did Opus Magnum, TIS 100, Infinifactory. So like a lot of previous programming games. So it's
What's
really
the name of this again?
Exapunks, EXA Punks.
X at XO.
And
all right, which was
oh yeah,
very
and it's
cool.
on Steam.
My pick, just a quick little news update, by the way. Brian, earlier in the show, we talked about SpaceX did a launch. They landed a first stage booster.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. Well, it's, we know they do that all the time
Right.
now. So, but they actually third reuse, third time they've been able to use this booster. Elon Musk just tweeted out a little while ago, they've been trying to recover the upper stages that the fairing's a covering that goes over the satellite.
Right.
And what they've been doing is they've actually have like parasails on them, so they can kind of like guide down and land in specific places. They've been trying to catch them on a boat. Mr. Stevens, they haven't been able to do that, but Elon says the fairings made a very, very nice landing in the water, and he says I think they're going to be able to dry them out and use them again because they weren't exposed for too long, and there was not any apparent damage from the impact, which is kind of cool because we saw them at the factory. Remember, that's like a $6 million piece of hardware that goes over the rocket. So between 50 or 60 million for the first stage and the 6 million or 40 million for the first stage, like 6 million for the fairings. It's great.
Dude, that's great.
Nice.
So, my pick is I don't want to get too controversial. I don't want to pick something that the critics really loved and the audiences liked, but not as much. And I don't want to come across as really, really highbrow in my pick. So I'm just warning you. I just watched it. I enjoyed it. And you're like, oh, Andrew's putting on an airs, agreeing with all the critics. But sorry, sometimes it's just that. Paddington 2.
Oh my God, it's so good.
It's fun. It's not like it's got like 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's not, you don't watch that and go like, this is the best movie I've ever seen, or anything like this. But if you watch it, go, it's delightful. Everybody's delightful in it. It's a fun, enjoyable movie, and really, really liked it.
Yeah,
and Hugh Grant was amazing.
It does get like an automatic upgrade too if you watch it with a loved one under the age of 15. I mean, it's just purely magical. It's really delightful.
I didn't do that, but yeah, it's just such a sweet, well done movie. The core message of the movie is that Paddington brings out the best in everybody, and he does that. And then the Hugh Grant character is just great. It's just delightful to watch him play that kind of role.
What prompted you to watch Paddington 2?
Well, I liked Paddington 1, so
okay. I just thought okay, cool.
Well, are you judging me? That was
no.
I-
He's asking like if it just
I
popped
didn't-
up on Netflix or
Yeah, I-
whatever.
Oh no,
But
it's
there was a
on.
special reason.
I think it's on HBO now.
Okay.
Got it.
Cool.
So I have Amazon Prime and I subscribe to HBO through that.
Mhm.
So
Nice.
So that's it. Which I just got like a new 75-inch TV, so that's been fun times.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, the Cyber Monday thing, but you're like, oh, cool, big TV, and then big TV shows up at your door, and I'm like, this is bigger than my apartment. I'm just gonna live in this box now. But it's funny because my girlfriend was able to help me install it, and she weighs half as much as the TV, so that was fun. It's mounted on the wall. Fun times. Yeah, it's been weird.
Awesome. All right, we'll take a few minutes and come back and do
Cool.
after things.
Oh yeah.
Matuba says, I thought HBO via Prime thing was ending. No, that's Prime Channels, I believe is what they call it. I don't think that there's any news about that ending anytime soon. I think it makes a lot of money for Amazon. But I don't know.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. How's the stuff deck looking? You're out there with the...
Yeah, no, so Justin's going to win our bet because I got a little explanation of just how long permitting takes. And so it'll be a hot minute. And it won't be in terms of how long it takes to, physically move and do stuff, but what a circus it is.
That's fine.
So this is to get a septic system installed.
Yeah, and then also to get all the electrical rewired or whatever. Like we have to wait to send someone out and, check it out, sign off on everything. So
bummer.
it'll be a
Yeah,
hot
the,
minute.
the speedy wheels of government spinning
and-
ever fast.
And we're out on the fringes of that bees. It shouldn't take too long theoretically, but we're gonna have to hand everything off one step at a time.
Yeah. Well, it's for everybody's good, right? The good of the people.
Sure.
Good. Well, I mean, look, Speedy Gonzalez. You wanna be out there doing everything so fast. Next thing you know, neighborhoods exploded because you needed a septic system so fast. Couldn't hold it.
Hee hee.
Well, how else was your weekend?
This is a bit I called. I didn't realize. I didn't realize the underlying tension in these punchlines.
No, it's not that bad. It's just it's going to be a good bit of waiting, which is a bummer because I'm finally ready, financially in a position to move forward, and then I don't get to move forward. So it's like, but man, this weekend Bonnie had her Christmas show at the Clay Place.
Now they know Christmas is not for 3 more weeks, right?
Yeah. And so she had to work the entire time, which meant I was on kid duty. And hoo boy, man, those 3 girls, they could be a handful.
3 children?
Yeah. Who knew?
Oh.
And me, absent any excuses or work to be done, just, had to get my nails painted by my 6-year-old.
Aw, that sounds nice. What color?
Had a sparkles. I think there's some of it still on there.
Oh,
Yeah.
fancy.
But no, it was delightful. I did get to finish Bodyguard.
Oh, nice.
We're not recording the show right now, right?
I mean, we are live. You're not on.
Fuck that ending.
Really?
Like there's a slice of hot garbage in there that really corrupted my overall enjoyment of the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
Wow, you were not a fan of what element of it?
Of the Mission Impossible style peeling back the like for no justifiable reason. Like, one of the things I loved about it is that they were so good about putting women in places of all the power belonged to women, and I like the fact that it opened with a powerless woman being bullied around by her husband into attempting suicide bombing, and I thought that was an important spread, an important spectrum of representations of women in positions of various levels of power. And then they decide to undo all that in this weird ass, like, talking to the viewer at home and admonishing, like, ha, you thought I was just a dumb lady, but I was the mastermind, and I'm announcing this to no benefit of my own, just because, ha. And then all of a sudden all of a sudden it's monochromatic and dumb, and I really disliked it. I hated it.
I will say that that is an element that I felt maybe was kind of over proving the conclusion, that it was a little bit of a gilding the lily, but it did not bother me in the way that it bothered you.
Yeah, it took what I thought was elegant and super smart and gave a lot of trust to the audience, and then displayed that it had none of those things. It was a real bummer.
Interesting. Okay.
I hear your point 100% on that part. I just walked in here and I'm like, I heard the last part of what you said. I'm like, oh, I know what you mean. And it did not take away for how much I enjoyed the rest of it, but that part felt like a bit, okay.
It was, it was just so unnecessary and added nothing and only took away from its elegance.
Well, because it's also like, it was like, so why didn't you just, like, minute one? Like,
oh, no, she didn't want to. I mean, that was clear. She didn't want to.
Yeah.
And what I loved about this was that first episode, he has so much compassion.
Yeah.
He has so much compassion and stuff. And then the end of it, it's like he's wrong to be this. I was kind of like, it didn't need that. It didn't need that extra little bonus twist. But I loved the rest of it so much, though. I'm like, all right.
I agree. I agree.
But have you heard? I didn't realize that this was apparently a meme, but the whole the mom thing.
What's up with that? Because I keep seeing tweets about it, and you're involved, and the morning stream is involved. What's going on?
So here's what happened. There's my joke about Bodyguard. It's like, oh, I think it's great. I don't quite understand why everybody keeps calling their boss mom. Like, that seems odd for British police protocol. But other than that, it seems like a hell of a show. And I thought it was just kind of a throwaway thing. But then Scott digs in his heels and is like, no, they're calling each other mum. And that's like an honorarium in England. And he like sticks to the fact that they're calling each other mum, and I'm like, I don't.
They're definitely saying ma'am. They're saying ma'am,
but they say ma'am like, weird.
Yeah,
that's what. And so I was like, I thought we were initially just joking around, like, and I'm like, oh, ha, I'm making fun of the British people and their silly talk with how they say ma'am, but he's like, no, it's mum. And then it became this thing that has kind of gone on Twitter for the last week.
And nobody put Exhibit A, the closed captions that clearly say
no. So here's what happened is that first there was the wave of the closed captions, right? And then there were other British people that were like, no, I'm British. and they're definitely, the closed captioning is wrong.
What?
And that they are saying mum. And that's a thing that is said in British police slang.
Are they trolling?
I mean, I felt very confident in my position before any evidence came in. Like, I'm like, no, they're not calling each other mom. Like, that's ridiculous. They're not calling each other mum. They're not calling each other mom. So there was one funny moment where I was on the stream and on my stream, and somebody was like, have you asked Will yet? Will Harris, our friend Will Harris. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll do that now. So I text. I never know when Will's up and when he's asleep, because beyond the time zone change, he's up at all hours of the night anyway. So I just text him and I'm like, have you seen Bodyguard? And he just replied, ma'am. But apparently there's also Netflix put out a little funny video about how there's been like Twitter talk about how like I was really confused watching Bodyguard because I didn't know, like I thought that our main character not only had many moms in high places, but also an extremely close relationship with some of his moms, which considering the last show that Richard Madden was on might not be necessarily much of a stretch. But
U.S. Bodyguard fans left baffled by mom references. Oh my goodness.
It's funny because it's like if you've been watching British shows for years, like, growing up on like a lot of that stuff, like you don't think about it. You're like, oh, it's ma'am. It's their version of saying, madam or ma'am, short form of madam for ma'am instead of sir, madam is. You just think about that, but then it's funny that, I didn't know. So did Scott think it was applied to male and females both?
No, he just thought that it was an honorarium for women in power, in some way derivative of like the queen, that you called a superior mum.
Crazy.
Where is he on this now?
Well, I'll tell you what. I get to have my victory dance tomorrow. So I will hopefully be declared the victor.
In his defense, in a hierarchical aristocratic society, you could make the argument that.
I think there was like he was so sure about it that I was like, maybe, I guess, like, it would seem odd to me that I've never heard that before. I've certainly watched plenty of police procedurals from England. Like, this isn't the first time I've ever seen a cop show from England.
Well, also like in the James Bond movies, like with the Daniel Craig with Judi Dench.
Yeah, exactly.
His mom. But I guess I could see where you would think that was. I could kind of see where he would get that impression that it was because if you're watching a James Bond movie or a cop movie that would do that. But of course, it was enough that. I just thought it was a joke just because it definitely sounds like they're saying "mom" to American ears, but beyond that, I thought it was just like, oh no, because he's like Scottish, right? And that's the other thing is that him specifically with that brogue sounds that sounds more like mom. The man sounds more like mom with his accent. Yeah.
All right, you guys ready for After Things?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Brian, are you going to have to step out?
Yeah, I'll have to bolt out in like 8 minutes, and then I'll come back.
Okay. All righty, well then, take it away, Andrew, in 3, 2.
Hello and welcome to the After Things podcast. I'm Andrew Main with my co-host, Mr. Bryce Castillo.
Hi, everybody. You're not going to get me. You're not going to trick me. Hi.
Oh, okay. All right, we're not.
I don't know why I don't know why I said that like you were a dog.
I know. You're not going to trick him as being a gracious co-host. He'll get you. He'll rub it right in your face. Hi, everybody.
Hey, Brian Brushwood.
Oh, man, I was tempting fate. I took 2 sips of my drink during that intro, waiting for you to try to get me.
Oh, no. Those days are past. Or are they? One of the things we could talk about here is we started before the show, before Weird Things, talking about how there's Tumblr's, Bryce was just, to the point of tears over Tumblr getting rid of porn. And is this guys, he said it was a national tragedy. Am I lying, Bryce?
That is the way that I phrased that, yes.
Okay, I'll rest my case. And Tumblr is one of those early 2000s sort of phenomenons where, hey, everybody wants to have a voice. We want to have a voice. And then shortly after Tumblr, though, you got Facebook and you got Twitter. And a lot of times, like, my voice is, I just want to share this thing and offer a quick commentary on it. And that exploded. That got huge. And so you had Facebook, and then, Twitter never kind of grew to Facebook levels, but Twitter's like my favorite outlet because it's like, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I'm thinking. And that's kind of it. And then that sort of fell, like Tumblr usage didn't grow like everything else did. And then it got acquired by Yahoo. And then now it's part of Verizon, Verizon, all that. And then Medium came along. Medium was like, hey, like have a place like if you want to go to WordPress and have a WordPress blog is great. WordPress is great for that. If you want to, just tell somebody, hey, I want to share this thing with you. Medium was kind of a neat idea, but I don't know, what the statuses of media is at this Medium at this point. But do we need a forum or do we need some way to like, hey, I just want to write a thing and share it with everybody?
I think the question there really lies in what lessons did we learn and do we now infer from the blogging revolution? And that was really the precursor, even pre-social media, was the birth of blogs and then the empires built upon them. And now we are seeing kind of the remains of that. We saw a big a sale at pennies on the dollar, at least from what they expected, of Mike to Bustle, which is another blogging platform. Bustle was also looking at buying some of the Gawker assets. Gawker probably was the aggregate or the larger empire that kind of rose the highest before, much like Icarus and its wings of wax, it collapsed back down to earth. But now the question is, the business of blogging was built on top of display advertising. Looking at what display advertising was being sold for at physical newspapers, in newspaper websites. Now you could say, hey, look, we can slice by way of the niche nature of blogs. We can know exactly what our demos are. You can sell right to that demo, and that can be that. And then social media came along, and it became even more of a cost-effective solution to sell not only to exactly the demo, but also per click and per impression in a way that you really couldn't with a blog that you're selling, a buyout for a month or something like that. So now you have some of these blogging platforms that still exist that are still doing really well, like Verge and Vox and that kind of stuff. But even then, you're seeing consolidation. When now for the rest of us, the idea of I want to write something, I want to just get it out there. I think that's kind of been left behind, in part cannibalized by the fact that we can get out to more people that we know via social media, but also now there's not really a business. Nobody has yet to say, oh, people writing in kind of long form, that's the business that I want to be in, aside from, maybe Medium. But even then, they've kept trying to spin it out into like, oh no, we'll take it and aggregate it and be able to resell it on this very component-y sort of basis.
How does Medium make their money? Is it with advertising or do you pay for the service?
They have a paid subscription element to it, and then you give claps to articles that you like, and I think that's how they determine
give the
share.
clap to an article you like.
No, you do. You finish reading it and you go to the bottom and there's a little a little clap button. Here you go. So this article has 172 claps, and so if you're a paid Medium member, you click to give it claps, and those claps.
Interesting. So you pay to have a bigger
Yeah.
voice as a consumer, not a louder voice as a producer.
No. But you don't pay. Do you pay per clap?
No, it's $5 a month, and you give
but
an unlimited.
You pay
claps,
for the
I guess.
ability to have claps.
The ability to
Right.
clap. Yeah.
Right.
And this, by the way, Medium was started by Evan Williams, co-founder of Twitter, which he was looking for, to solve the problem of Twitter, the short form. That model doesn't, I don't know, that model doesn't really sound to me like that's the best form.
It doesn't feel generalized in the way that display advertisements make a very generalized, or like if I don't think I will ever be a paying subscriber to Medium, even if 10 blogs that I like to read go onto Medium. I don't think I think you'd have to be really invested in whatever text.
Yeah, and I think the problem with those platforms too, where they want to go to like subscribe, like one subscription to pay for everything, is they're not really good if it's the first place your content appears in. And platforms that seem to do really well by, hey, we're going to, pay a percentage out from this platform to you, tend to be ones where it's a secondary, tertiary market for a creator. Netflix would buy TV shows originally that had appeared elsewhere. If you're a TV creator, your goal was not to go to Netflix and then get a percentage of Netflix income like Spotify. Your goal was either to sell ancillary rights or now Netflix to pay for your show outright, like they would from, bid the same price. And books, if I write a book, the first place I put my book, if on Amazon, is I don't make it available in the Amazon a la carte Kindle Unlimited, as I try to sell as many copies of this thing as I can, because the income I make from that, hey, read as much as you want and then we'll pay you a percentage, is much less than having the first market I put it into. And I think that's part of the problem Medium. It's like, yeah, write your posts here and then you're going to get a percentage of this. But the problem is you run into is that you get some people who are, a guy like when Bill Simmons was on there or whatever, he can get an outsized response and gets promoted within the system. And if you're an indie, it's even if you're it's easier to get 5 million claps than 5 claps, I guess sort of what I'm trying to say at a certain point. It was like Twitter, they already decide winners and losers. And if you're in that model, you're at a disadvantage. It's like with Twitter, Twitter has this, hey, we think you might want to follow Katy Perry. Like, man, you guys did a lot to build the Twitter brands of people who are already famous.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and it's weird because in Twitter, right, the onboarding process, if you are trying to get people who maybe don't know about Twitter, you would want to put the most popular people in front of them because, like, if my mom signs up for Twitter, she will be better served by being offered, like, Katy Perry or I don't know, a news anchor than, a podcaster because that's every new user is zero, is no data yet. So that's tough to kind of have to be off of like the surface level knowledge.
So is there, and I get comes like, is there a need for something? I mean, I like the idea of just going to a website, getting a blank sheet, typing something out, having a link and being able to share. And there are ways you can do that. Google Docs, other things that could do that. Back in the day, remember Google Docs, originally it was, what was the startup they bought that you could actually just, there was originally just start creating a doc. It was such a genius, Rightly, I think it was,
Okay.
and it was, remember that? And that got bought. It was
yeah.
like a genius idea of like, well, we could just write it into right into this page and now you can do this. And so that was kind of cool. Now I think, what is it that Google does now is, if you go to like there's a URL you type in doc. What is it?
Yeah, I feel like I heard about that. It's like a sheet.google or sheet.google. Is that it? There are like URLs where it's like you type in the URL and it will just automatically start a new document or a new sheet or a new slideshow for you. I don't remember exactly what that is though.
Yeah, I use and I've added some JavaScript bookmarklets. Like I have a Gmail list bookmarklet that sits inside of my favorites thing. So whenever I want to Gmail something and do that, a lot of those little kind of cool things like that. But yeah, they added some cool thing like that. And you can share the stuff, but it's very kludgy to try to share it or view it, share it as a website or something like that. But I do think there's something for, hey, here's a long form thing I wrote that's not going to live in the Facebook ecosystem. It's not going to live, it's a thing that exists on its own. It makes discovery harder, which is, part of the problem people are trying to solve with. But I think there's a lot of neat opportunity for longer form content. One, just to be able to do it. But yeah, as far as to monetize it, advertising, I don't think advertising is always the best answer. And I think sometimes it's the worst answer in some cases. Not because I have a problem with advertising, just what you get, you look at what's the compensation rate for YouTube.
Sure. Yeah. And that's kind of where the initial blogging revolution happened, A, organically, which was kind of the amazing part about it. But then B, the business models were built on the same people that were being either felt left out or being fired from traditional media, which at that point was still vibrant enough that you could say, okay, well, I'm an editor. I used to work at New York Magazine. I know a bunch of freelancers. I know a bunch of places that I know a guy that sells ads. And if I tell him that these freelancers can get these impressions, then we can sell these ads. The spreadsheet works out. Let's all go do some cocaine, which is traditional journalism speak in New York City. So that now that's not the case. the best that you can do, and you even started to see this 5-6 years ago, was every blog now does the daily deals. Look at these deals that are on Amazon. Look at these things. Why? Because Amazon affiliates is a very easy way that you can say, hey, look, click on a thing, maybe you buy it, maybe you don't, but now you're going to be in, we're going to get that kickback for whatever you do buy. And when you were looking at that at scale, that's can be a chunk of change for somebody. But again, you're relying on another action beyond what you are actually doing. It's very hard to make money on the written word, or at least in a way that matters, and I almost wonder whether or not we look at it in the same way as a broadcast medium in the future, or at least what the players that are still rocking and rolling with it, what that monetization structure looks like in the past, in the future. Because I don't know if paywalls are it. Paywalls have always been very, very tricky to get people to pay for stuff, or to give them 10 free articles, and then I have to read the New York Times on my phone in private mode until I burn those 10 free articles. And display advertising isn't what it was, and God knows what it will even be in 10 years.
So I wonder if there's a possibility for us to go back to paying for everything, because right now what we don't want to do is bust out our credit card for anything. But I can see, and maybe it will be Bitcoin or something, but I could see a standalone currency that it's like you spend $100, you get 1,000 Jeep Chops, right? And then it's like, hey man, did you dig this? Click this button, and it's super easy to give me 3 Jeep Chops for it. And then, or it's like, hey, the rest of the article will cost you 1 Jeep Chop. And it's like, if I could break myself of thinking of it as real money and start to think of it as Warcraft gold or whatever, I think I'd feel a lot better. Like, I don't think I will ever bother to get a login or a whatever for the Wall Street Journal. When I'm out of my 5 articles, then I guess I'll read it next month, or maybe I'll do a VPN and see if it'll let me incognito my way in. But if I just had some version of reading Warcraft Gold, sure, if it was as simple as just hitting a button and having some fake coins sent out, that would be really easy. And I think I wouldn't mind going back to paying for things.
I agree. There was very interesting. I was reading one of these books about kind of the early history of like the internet and whatnot, about how in the early 90s, there was, when we went for like the HTTP standard, and we went for this sort of the idea of, should you identify yourself to the server before you get authentication, before you get something off a server or not, and the debate over like, was this a good idea? Because it seemed like, great, any documents open, like the natural state is to make these things available, accessible, whatever, so I can cross-link, whatever. Seemed like a great idea, but what was lost there was, it made it harder if you wanted to put some sort of transactional thing interface in between there to say, hey, yeah, to read this page, pay 20 cents. Now you can add these things, but at the early stages, it would have been easier to put it in place if we had a different way that the exchanges happen. It's been more eloquently explained by other people besides me. That was maybe that was divergent path number 1, was that we said, hey, everything wants to be free. Information doesn't want anything. But, that was one path we took, as we said, let's go for openness, whatever. The second thing happened, though, was like the resistance of the credit card companies, to PayPal, to these other systems, because they like that 30 cents per transaction. They like that 30 cents they make per transaction, which meant you don't see a lot of things below $1. No, it's not worth it to sell anything for $1 for 50 cents or 25 cents because of, the credit card companies and the reactions to that. And, there was arguments too, like it's hard to do fraud protection for that. So, and it might be that, we do have to go to Jeep Chops if we want this, because the system is sort of really designed not to make it easy to do 20. They're like, oh, well, put all your money into this account and you do this. Like, well, those, end up being kind of churning operations. And there was a lot of that early stage internet, like, oh, just deposit $20 in here and now you can pay 20 cents to this. I got excited when Amazon, looked like they were going to do like a more, advanced payment system and stuff, because that looked like that can be cool. But we keeps falling apart. And then we have the problems now too, like, you've had people who sell things that the payments operator don't approve of, adult content, whatever, all of a sudden find themselves shut out. And that's, a scary situation where, thing that's totally within the law and free speech, but all of a sudden like, nah, we're uncomfortable with that. Now you can't use this platform, and now you're excluded from selling this content. What's that?
Making a new gatekeeper, basically.
Yeah. Gatekeepers love gates. That's why they're gatekeepers. So, Brian, I'm all for Jeep Chops.
And alternate to that, if not, little Coinbase things, then maybe kind of a universal Unicard, where it's like you pay $40 a month or whatever, and then you just go wherever you want, and it turns all of everything into Spotify, where it's like maybe it's a plugin for Chrome or whatever, and it allocates your $40 by who you visited or whatever.
I love like alternative currencies, different things. Like we've talked about this before. Like, do you know one of the biggest thing has been in Africa and parts of the third world? One of the currencies they use because their own
was it cell phone minutes?
Yeah, calling cards.
Yeah. It's like cigarettes in prison.
Yeah. What led for that to be such a large?
Everybody wants them, and it's unregulated by the government that can oftentimes make your currency worthless.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you can't tax minutes. You start swapping that stuff around.
And it has intrinsic value, which has been, my criticism towards, Bitcoin, things like this is that, they represent how much energy you use to create the thing, which no different than other things that we trade that, don't perform anything. But cell phone minutes, like if I have 5 cell phone minutes, I get to use them to do things. And I think we may evolve into a system where it's energy credits or computational credits, where, you're going to be trading off, processor access or energy points or something. I think that would be inevitable. But,
Well, I mean, I guess the question then becomes, for writing, is it worth it for me to put the time in to write so I could get the Jeep Chops, right? Like, or at least just to make it so it's worth my time. Beyond getting my voice out there, getting my brand out there, like, is there something? Can I look at the end of the month and say, hey, this is cool?
Yeah, I think that, and we've talked a bit about like with podcasting and stuff, like the project I'm working on with Audiomatic, which is, hey, I think there's this nice space between podcasting and audiobooks that, maybe could be filled. And I think that there's in the writing thing, and, like I could see that there are things, I would like to write longer form content, but I don't want to, doesn't need to be an ebook. It doesn't need to be an ebook, but it should be something that, like, if here's $2 to read this cool thing. And, there have been tons of platforms that allow you to sell digital downloads. That's nothing new, but it's the figuring out the simple.
Well, look, I mean, for me, I wanted to start writing every day again. And it's something where I've run a couple blogs, and I've written every day for large stretches of my life, and I had not. So I wanted to do it. And the question was, in 2018, like, I used to run blogs. Now I don't. It's 2018 now. What do I do? Like, where is even just a place that is better than just shouting into the void to write on a regular basis? Do I just make a more? And so I tried a few things. I tried Facebook. That was a disaster. And either I was poorly formatting longer form stuff on my personal page that, there was a reaction, but it was like, okay, I don't really know what I'm getting out of this. I don't think I'm gaining any followers on Facebook. And then it was like, all right, well, maybe I'll try Medium. And I wrote a few things on Medium, and it just kind of felt like shouting into the void, and that was that. But eventually the key was start a newsletter, because at the very least, I got people's emails and I can let them know when I have things that I want to do, and when I have things that there are important. And so if I wanted to write about politics every day, that was really the only thing that I could think of for which I would be happy at the end of the day. And now we have about 1,500, a 1,500 person mailing list that goes out 5 days a week that are used to reading my work. And like, I just know, okay, that's a thing. It's a thing that I have that I feel good about the time and effort that I put into it. Because other than that, man, outside of, what made blogging so exciting in the aughts was, man, it was really a flat area where it's like, if you wrote every day, you could probably email somebody that worked at a bigger blog and say, hey, what's your freelance stuff? Or I have an idea for an article. Can I write? Who writes on weekends?
Yeah.
Do you mind if I do that? And it's like, it was exciting. There was it was new. There was a possibility for advancement. And also I was younger, so it took less for me to be happy with, doing something with my effort. But now it's like, well, crap. Like, what is even worth the time to do it in a world where everything is available and everything is free, and I'm already reading, more than I probably read in blogs just scrolling Twitter every day.
Well, and we've been talking a lot about like monetization, but I also think that part of the reason like none of these platforms have taken off is because they don't have very good community elements to them, right? Like Medium does have commenting, and I think they've got like, you can quote stuff and it'll see what the most quoted stuff is, but I don't see, like, we talked about what if you could give some fake currency to the articles that you read or whatever links that you were being sent to, and I look at like Reddit, which is more of an aggregate system, but they are able to sustain themselves as an aggregate for people giving them money for not making anything new, for just aggregating links to other sites, and that is because the Reddit community, for everything about it, is rather tight knit, right? It's built to make communities and to reinforce those communities, and when you have a community that becomes as fortified as it is, then it starts to have appreciation for the system underlying it. And for Reddit, that's not original content. No one at Reddit is being paid to write anything, and yet that is one of the top community spaces in the world. And I don't know that you can create a good blogging platform that will have interoperability without a community space.
I think that there are two different needs you want to try to address there, though. One is, I just want a platform where I can share this thing with everybody, and I have this one thing to say. And Reddit has become this amazing phenomenon in that, right? I mean, like, to me, like, two of the most kind of important stories of the last 10 years, really, I think, of Twitter and Reddit for me, almost, as far as for the average person being able to reach out. But that's one thing. But if you're a Justin or a Brian and you have a following, and you say, I have a following, I can point people in a direction. I just need an incentive to say, go here and go do this. I need an incentive to sit down and spend 5 hours writing this thing, because otherwise I'll just do a fun couple quick tweets and I'm done. I need an incentive to do this. I need a platform that captures that incentive, I guess, which is different, where it's not so much I don't need a community for it. I just need to be able to take the people who already have and go, hey, over here's the thing I did, and this is how I get compensated. Or a thought. Speaking of which, Justin, let me ask you about your 1960 election project.
Yes.
What is the business model behind that?
The business model is kind of twofold. Number one, the model is, I want to, without kind of getting into, all right, well, screw it, whatever, we're here. That was a big question, of like, all right, so either I can put this whole thing together and then I can shop it around to some people and say, all right, with X amount of expectation of listeners, I can try and sell it as like a titled sponsorship kind of thing, right? And I can catch money on the front end for an advertiser. That's traditionally what the model is for those kinds of podcasts, is you have a project, you shop it around, you see who wants to pay for it, and that's that. That's hard for me because I don't have a history in doing it. The audience that I have for politics, or Night Attack or anything like that is not enough that we could say, hey, Squarespace, we could do this. Now I could try and find somebody that has relationships with those brands and say, hey, look, we really like this is a bit of a flyer and we'll take a lesser amount now. But if you want to be there for when we do season 2, then this would be, good faith. And I could, use that. Or, and this is probably what we are going to do, is to kickstart it and to basically get it the majority done, and then kickstart the ability to hire on a professional engineer to kind of make sure that it has all the polish of something that you would hear on Gimlet or NPR or Slate, and basically get the money from the fans up front, and then depending on what the reaction is, either say, all right, well, season 2, now we'll be able to go to Squarespace or Allbirds or HelloFresh or something like that, and go from there. Or, the business model is the same way that the same thing we do every night, Pinky, launch a Patreon, and monetize it from there, with the idea being that would probably be a monthly thing where part of this would be, all right, I'll have some kind of content that will definitely be out every month for people, but the podcast would only happen maybe once or twice a year, depending on what we do. So that's kind of the business thought around it. My initial thought now is to kickstart it because it would be kind of a double solution of nothing really gets people excited about things like Kickstarter. Kickstarter is an event, it is the beginning of something. And if I were able to offer like, hey, I'm going to do this, but I'm enough of the way down the road, I've recorded enough of my own stuff, I've aggregated enough of the media that I could probably even have a editor sort of have like episode 1, maybe 2 close to being done, and then have the stretch goals be additional content that we could do, that I could kind of get the best of both worlds. I could get money to pay for talent, and I could get people excited enough that now it gets a little bit of momentum out of the gate, where everybody that I know is talking about like, oh, look at this thing. It's really cool. Hey, let me share it on social media.
Have you considered doing like, I guess I don't know exactly how Dan Carlin does it, but doesn't he like cut his stuff up as like iTunes things and puts them out?
No, he lets them for free for so many days, and then after that they go for $1 an episode in the back catalog. And the way he's made it work is he's constantly creating new stuff, and he has this giant, immense back catalog where people can spend dollars and dollars and dollars at a time.
There was someone though early on who was like using iTunes or at the time, the music download sites as a medium for not a premium podcast, but it would be like, here's $1 or $2 for this hour-long thing.
Well, I know Sigler took
was-
his audiobooks and serialized them on podcasts.
I thought that was how Hardcore History was early on, but I don't know. anything about it.
Possibly.
But-
The only issue now is that, man, it is such a crowded genre, and the talent that is there right now is something that I can't break through. And also to this point, this still to me is something that I need to prove that I can do. And so I am more, the Kickstarter thing has become more attractive to me, not because even it's like, I would like to not go in the red on the project, right? But I also just want people to listen. I really just want it to be something that is heard, and I want it to be good. So I just need to kind of get it out there, and putting any kind of paywall as the initial kind of like, how do you do is just, I think, a non-starter when some of the best people in public radio aren't going into public radio because they want to talk about grisly murders in awesome cadences with awesome microphones with awesome editors.
All right. So issue resolved. Problems
Nailed it. You're welcome, world.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
I think-
I don't know if that's the right thing. That's just kind of where I am with it now.
Yeah, I don't know anybody knows what the right thing is. And I think that it illustrates though that kind of the, we get, I'm sure Bryce and Brian, you get this too, but Justin and I, we get this too all the time. It's like, hey, we're such and such starting this new podcast network. And, we'd love for you to have you guys, we have a new app and this thing going on board and monetization. And, we're going to do ads and we're going to do this. And it's like, this has been going on for, forever. And that's people like entrepreneurs go like, here's my solution. These people have this content. We'll find it, we'll sell ads on it to an audience and be this distribution platform. That's our genius idea, where it's like, well, what's the value you're bringing? The value you're bringing there really is how to extract value out of that relationship from the creator and the audience and put it in your pocket, where there are real solutions to be found out there for like, how do you help people find cool stuff? How do you help creators either grow their audience or get compensated and paid for it or make their life easier? Solve one of those things, great. Solve all four of those things, wonderful, wonderful. And every now and then something comes along that does a good part of that, at least, So solve that. We're asking you to solve that, people. Solve it.
Yeah, get on that.
Get on it.
We want to buy Tuesday.
Today's
Any
Monday, so.
picks?
I don't have any really strong picks outside of say I did finish. I think we discussed it last week. I finished the rest of Homecoming, and it's quite good. Watch Homecoming.
I have a pick. I think I mentioned this last week, so I guess this is more of an update. I've been going back and watching Futurama.
Yeah.
And so I just got through the first two movies. What is it? Bender's Big Score and The Beast with a Billion Backs, and both of those are very good. And I've just started Bender's Game, which is like not paced well.
Oh, really?
It's despite the fact that it's like on Hulu, they're split up into episodes the way that they put them on TV, but it's like the concept doesn't even make sense, and then it's like,
I mean, are they riffing directly on Ender's Game or?
No,
that's
I
just a
don't know.
clever title?
Ender's Game.
Okay, all right,
I'm
all
not
right.
going to be able to say, but it's like, oh, we got this crystal, and the crystal is what made black matter a thing. But then there's that anti-crystal, and they can't touch, otherwise it's useless. And then,
I wonder what will happen.
but then like the whole conceit of like, oh well, it's actually there's like a D&D element, and they're in the world of Dungeons and Dragons because of a weird thing. It's all really kludgy in a way that the first two of those movies ended up feeling like they made more sense in world. So I don't know. That's the Futurama update for today.
Cool.
Crap. Something I forgot it. Forgot it. Geez. Anybody else?
Almost
No.
there.
Okay.
Almost there.
Go.
You can
Go.
pass. You can pass.
This is a book that's more of it's almost photo essay, whatever, but it's also a great introduction to, Marshall McLuhan is The Medium is the Massage, which was, take on his essay, The Medium is the Message. And the book is actually it's McLuhan, and also it was Quentin Fiore was the guy who did the actual design of it. Marshall McLuhan is a guy that was an amazing thinker about media, and really is the media landscape expanded considerably in the 60s with TV and print and everything else. He made wonderful observations on things, and it's not so much, he'd have this concept of a probe, which was just sort of kind of a question to ask. Oh, there's a version of it which was illustrated by Shepard Fairey that Bryce has found. But anyhow, I'm a fan of the original. The point is he asked very interesting questions. He was very good at looking at things and saying, is this a hot or a cold medium? Meaning like, are you engaged with it? Or are you just receiving from it? The difference between radio and television. He had these insights that were actually just really helpful for looking at stuff. And we don't really have a McLuhan of the modern age, which was sort of, he would probably give us a lot of insight into, he's very good at sort of framing and say, look at it this way. And it provides a lot of insight into stuff. And, if from talking about how, I can't do any of it justice, but Marshall McLuhan, check him out. Look at what he had to say about a lot of stuff. It was a very insightful way, and it's a really good lens to look at things today.
Nice.
So
I remember. So, a tribute to the fallen 31st president of the United States, George H.W. Bush, got me thinking about books that I've read about the Bush 41 White House. Among them, my favorite is War in a Time of Peace by David Halberstam. He is Halberstam is one of the best nonfiction writers of all time. His most famous book is The Best and the Brightest, all about the Vietnam War. So he has connections for days within the Pentagon, but it focuses on the Bush and Clinton White Houses, and specifically a fight within the Pentagon to basically say the era of boots on the ground is over, and that the United States should stop being the authority of dropping troops on the ground, because now it was the ascendancy of the Air Force that we as the Air Force can basically solve any conflict that we want via air power. What we wind up getting from here is a very testy exchange in Rwanda, where the United States was very slow to react because we wanted to let some of the African nations handle conflicts that were in Africa. We saw what happened in Bosnia and Slobodan Milosevic, that eventually wound up with NATO going in to take care of things that were effectively the United States military wearing NATO hats. It's a fascinating look into power that is non-political. It is about a lot of these people, a lot about the leadership that both of them, shown. But go ahead and check that out. And something free. It just made me kind of happy and was a bit of a bygone era, specifically considering I thought a not only disgraceful on a comedic level, but just an unfunny, stupid and recursive kind of Saturday Night Live sketches about, basically like the most lowbrow, haha, Trump and Putin are gay, a comedy. That there was a great clip. It's on C-SPAN. You can look it up. You can just Google Dana Carvey, Bush, Christmas. And it was literally weeks after George H.W. Bush had lost to Bill Clinton that he invited Dana Carvey to the White House, that, of course, had done the very famous kind of impression of George H.W. Bush on Saturday Night Live for many years. And it just is kind of, I don't know. It just made me happy that there was a moment in which we could have a parody that was, at times not flattering, right? But he obviously got it, and he really liked it, and he thought it was really funny, and invited him over. And just the idea that, like, hey, look, there was a time in which we could talk about our differences and maybe even make fun of each other, and not wanted to end with arterial blood being sprayed on the walls of our internet dialogue.
I assume it was after this, but I remember there was a time that Dana Carvey came back to host Saturday Night Live, and during the monologue, he was doing a Bush impression, and then Bush, the actual Bush, interrupted to correct him on. He was like, "And what is this Nagada thing? I don't say that. That's not even." It was really charming and adorable.
There's another great pick. One of my favorite stand-up specials of all time is Dana Carvey's Critics' Choice, but he does a lot of funny kind of a whole bit about going to visit the Bush White House and whether or not Bush, and who knows how much of this is the shtick and how much of this is built in truth. But Bush saying, the only thing people are going to want to ask you is whether or not you did it in the Lincoln bedroom. and he's like, well, I'm not going to tell you. But my kid's middle name is Abe.
That's amazing.
Oh, you
there we go.
yourself, Andrew.
Sorry, I just had a little mute issue there. I've had friends and family that have been involved in Secret Service and have gotten to know a number of the Bush family. And let's set aside how our politics makes us filter the way we look at people for a moment. Instead of other guy bad, wrong party. And I like it when it's wonderful to be able to talk politics across the table and not through strawman filters of other people's points of views. I've heard a lot of stories about politicians behind the scenes. People I know who are on campaign trails, things like this, been around. Always heard wonderful things about Bush 41. Touching stories about kids visiting at Camp David and a little girl upset she lost her tooth, and because she couldn't find the tooth fairy wouldn't come, and 41 pulling out a pen and writing a letter from the President of the United States saying, I certify that she lost her tooth and is entitled to what is due to her from the tooth fairy. Little things like this. Barbara Bush making cookies for the kids and stuff. And I've heard this about the other Bushes too. I've heard about his kids. I've heard about it. The compassionate generosity of very, very. And there might be. I'm sure there are stories out there, but I've heard everybody I've known from different political stripes have talked about how they've just all across, very, very nice people. I never heard any Neil stories, but I've heard Jeb, George Jr. But I haven't heard anything about Neil. But Jeb and George both
Neil.
the same thing. Yeah.
Here's all I'll say. And there's the ever raging Twitter question of, okay, well, somebody dies, and then there's people that are mean to the person that dies, and then it's like, in my personal view, your mileage might vary, is that we have the entirety of history to detail every negative thing that might have happened. Of course, people care less about it when they've been dead for a while. But then again, I do care about it, which is why I'm doing a whole thing about an election that happened friggin' 60 years ago. So that being said, I don't know. Listen to Politics podcast so that I can explain my thoughts.
Gentlemen, anything else?
I think that's it.
No.
It's been after.
Cool.
Unless you're Christopher Hitchens. In that case, you were allowed to just say whatever you wanted at any time.
Well, because he always did, though, too. That was the thing. Is he just
it's just a bomb thrower of a human being.
Yeah.
Alrighty, well, we got to get ready for Cord Killers.
Cord Killers!
So we'll be back here in a couple hours. Justin, you doing anything else today? You streaming later tonight?
We are
stuff,
gonna
so
we're gonna make me some lunch. I'm gonna refuel, and then I'm going to start checking out this new solution that I have. And if it works, then I will stream. If it does not work, then I will be recording offline, and I will go from there.
Nice.
I will be shouting into a paper bag and closing it, and then holding on to it and saving the words for later.
Exactly.
Andrew, you got anything coming up? Are you still just plugging away?
I've got, coming out in February is the new Theo Cray book. The new
All
Theo
right.
Cray book's coming out. So
Nice.
Dude, I'm so excited. Really enjoying that series.
thank you. I've got to write the fourth one in the next few weeks. So
Man, wow.
Spoiler alert: Theo doesn't die.
Maybe it takes place in a previous timeline. He discovers an interdimensional portal.
Theo 2.
Hey, this Theo's a robot.
T2. That's a good name.
writing these things down. Calling my publisher. I've got a great new idea.
Alrighty, well, we'll
Hello.
see everybody.
Hello.
We'll see everybody soon. Thank you for watching. Bye, y'all.
Bye.